All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to call to order at 5:02 Truckee Planning Commission meeting, May 21st, 2024. Kaylee, roll call, please.
Chair Claren.
Here.
Vice Chair Gove.
Here.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Here.
Commissioner Taylor.
Here.
Commissioner Freeman is noted absent.
If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag. Forward. Thank you. Okay, so we usually call for public comment at this point. However, public comment is for items that are not on the agenda. So if you're here for Silver Creek or the appeal, there'll be a separate moment for you all to do your public comment. So if there's anybody in the audience that has public comment not relating to anything on the agenda, now's your time to speak. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Next, item 5, approval of minutes. I need a motion, please. That was from April 6th, no? April 16, 2024. Commissioner Kavanaugh can't vote. She was absent.
Motion to approve.
I second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Chair Claren.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gove.
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor.
Yes.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Abstain.
Thank you. With that, that brings us to 7.1. Public hearings, major review, application 2021-60 Silver Creek Estates. We're going to start with a staff presentation. You will all get your moment, trust me.
Thank you, Chair Claren. So tonight, as Chair Claren mentioned, we're here with the Silver Creek Estates. This is application 2021-60 and item 7.1. Tonight, the Planning Commission's role is to evaluate whether the project is consistent with our 2025 general plan and our development code, where the state allows us to do so, and then also determine if the requested incentives, concessions, waivers, and reductions can be granted pursuant to state density bonus law. I kept the discussion topics really surrounding state density bonus law. So when you're looking at these waivers, incentives, and concessions, for the incentives concessions, is the requested incentive concession resulting in an identifiable and actual cost reduction? For the waivers and reductions of development standards, would our standard application of the development standards physically prevent the project from being built at the permitted density? And then for both incentives, concessions, and waivers and reductions, if they were granted, would they cause a public health and safety problem, an environmental impact, harm, a significant adverse environmental impact, harm historical property, or be contrary to state or federal law? The project is located at the entrance to the Winter Creek subdivision. It is on Winter Creek Loop, and it's about, it is 1.71 acres in size. The general plan land use designation, the 2025, is residential, high density residential, or RH. The zoning, the majority of the zoning is RM15, and there is a very small general commercial zone portion, which is this kind of little finger, I guess you could call it, at the top of the project. There is no development being proposed in that area. Adjacent land uses include to the north, commercial, that's a dermatology office, a hotel to the east, Village Green, multifamily zoning to the south, and then to the west, Winter Creek, which is actually zoned multifamily, but the Winter Creek subdivision, and then resource conservation to the northwest. I wanted to start with a little background on how our subject parcel was created. In 2003, the Town of Truckee Planning Commission approved a development permit, a plan development, a use permit, and a tentative map for a 167-unit residential subdivision. You'll see the approval on the tentative map, which is kind of like the draft map. The site was originally contemplated as 20 condo units. However, by the time of the final map, those condo units were removed, and we were left with Parcel B, which is large lot Parcel B, slated for future development on the Winter Creek subdivision map. There had been some kind of discussion on whether this property has been upzoned since it was created, and it has not. It has always been RM15. Since its creation, the whole area was RM15 when this subdivision was approved, and also our dwelling unit equivalents, which I'll talk about in a little bit, were also in place at this time. So the Winter Creek neighborhood was a planned development, and I think some of the commissioners were here last month when we looked at a planned development for trailside townhomes, and that's where a developer comes in and requests waivers and reductions of development standards, and the Planning Commission can determine whether these waivers or reductions produces a superior quality design with some public benefit. So at the time of Winter Creek's development, the developer came in with a slew of waivers and reductions. The roadways are substandard for width. They're not the width of a standard public roadway, so they're considered private. They're a public roadway, but they have to be privately maintained because the town did not agree to maintain them. The neighborhood has substandard snow storage. There's very small lots. They're very built out with small setbacks, and also the narrow roads. There's not a lot of place to put snow. Kind of as an aside, I don't believe that staff would be supporting snow storage waivers or reductions in the future. We have a few neighborhoods that had asked for this, and we've seen that it's not working out so well. So I don't think this will come back in a planned development. They have increased site coverage. The lots are all substandard to size and width, reduced or zero setbacks. Let's see, they also have there was no affordable housing approved with the subdivision. There was wetland disturbance that was to create the connection to Brockway and some of the homes along the wetland, which is Parcel A. And to achieve the approval of the subdivision, there was a mitigated negative declaration that was adopted for the Winter Creek subdivision that also did look at Parcel B as part of that. So the Silver Creek Estates project is proposing 40 units in a mix of studio, one-bedroom, and two-bedroom rental apartments. 5 of those units are deed restricted to low-income affordability, so that's 60% of the area median income. 72 parking spaces are proposed with 26 in a garage, and this is spread about with 10 two-story buildings. Building materials are mostly fiber cement like hardy plank, board and batten, or panel siding in earth tone colors. We have composite roofs and metal stair railings and balcony railings. Don't say that fast. With the exception of the carriage units, all of the units do have either patios or balconies. The units all have laundry facilities, and the long-term and short-term bicycle parking requirements are also met with storage enclosures and storage underneath stairwells. Here is the site plan of Silver Creek and a listing of the buildings and the units provided. We will talk about this in a little bit, but you'll see that the rear of the parcel is fully encumbered by a transmission line easement from Liberty. It's 50 feet wide and denoted by the orange rectangle. I'm not providing floor plans in the interest of time, but if any of the commissioners want to discuss floor plans, I do have slides that are saved on this slideshow that we could discuss, but I will just go through the buildings elevations. We have buildings 1 and 8. These are 5,200-ish square foot buildings. They have 8 units, 2 one-bedrooms and 2 two-bedrooms on each floor. Building 2 is the same size and has the same layout for the second floor, except the first floors have 2 two-bedrooms, a 1-bedroom, and a studio, and the first floor units are all accessible units. Building 5 is a little smaller. It's about 4,000 square feet. It's got 4 two-bedroom units, 2 on each floor, and there is an accessible 2-bedroom unit located on the first floor. And then we move into the carriage units. These carriage units do not have any patios or balconies. Buildings 3 and 6 have 5-car garages below, and then 2 one-bedroom units on top. One of the one-bedroom units in Building 6 is one of the deed restricted to low-income affordability units. And then buildings 4, 7, 9, and 10 all have 4 car garages and then 2 studios up top. Buildings 4 and 9 are both deed restricted to low-income affordability. As part of the project, the applicant is requesting the following incentives and concessions. So the incentive concession is reduction in private exterior space requirement. And the waivers and reductions, we have 4 waivers: maximum site coverage, common recreational amenity, open space of 30%, and common usable open space, and then 3 reductions of standards for landscaping. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to the density bonus part of my presentation. The land use entitlement that needs to be approved this evening to permit this project is a development permit that is required to construct multifamily units, 11 or more, in the RM15 zone district, and also to disturb 26,000 square feet or more of the site. We usually say that a development permit recognizes that the use is allowed in the zoning district, and we look at issues of site layout and design for best utilization. That's a little bit skewed with our state density bonus law, but that's the usual purview of a development permit. So we'll start out with general plan consistency. In our 2025 general plan, the site is designated as a high-density residential site. These sites are for areas that are located near existing development. They're considered infill development, and they have pretty easy access to community services and existing infrastructure. The proposed project is providing multifamily rental housing units, meeting the needs of all of our economic segments of our community. The project is an infill site, and it's located adjacent to an existing residential neighborhood, and the residents are within biking or walking distance to many community amenities, parks, downtown, et cetera. The site has always been designated for high-density multifamily housing. So staff does believe that this is consistent with the 2025 general plan. Moving on to development code consistency, we'll start with where it is consistent, and we'll start with the base density. So just looking at the RM15 portion of the site, we have approximately 1.6 acres. That comes out to 24.693 dwelling units that would be allowed. Our development code section on maximum and minimum density allows density to be calculated based on the number of bedrooms. I believe this has been around in our code since the inception of it, and I believe the intent here is to promote the construction of smaller, more affordable by design units. So using that dwelling unit equivalent allowance in our code, we have 8 studio units, which are worth half a unit. 14 one-bedrooms, about 2/3 of a unit, and 14 two-bedrooms, about 0.8 of a unit, 80% of a unit. So doing that math, we get to 24.58 dwelling units, which is under the allowed 24.693. So for base density, not including state density bonus, it is consistent with our development code. The project is also consistent with our development code for snow storage. The requirement in the development code for this portion of town is that 50% of the parking, uncovered parking and driveway area be reserved, or that number be used to determine how much snow storage needs to be reserved on site. And then half of that snow storage has to be stored on site, half of it could be off-hauled. So looking at the math, there's approximately 12,385 square feet required. That means that 6,200 or so needs to be stored on site, and they are providing 7,700 on site. They do need to have an approved off-haul plan. That is conditions of approval 24 and 38. That would be approved by the town engineer, and those off-haul plans include the snow removal service, showing where they're off-hauling the snow, showing that they have permission to off-haul snow there and how they would do it. And then the engineering division would look at this and approve it. That has to be approved. And with that, that would be consistent with our development code. There's a few development standards that they're also consistent with. Setbacks, our height limit, and the laundry facilities. So for those, we are consistent, or the project is consistent with the development code. The development code also includes our inclusionary housing ordinance. This says that 15% of all new dwelling units must be required to be affordable, And so for this project, that would mean 5.4 units. The development code allows the developer to choose whether or not they would like to build a unit or pay a fractional amount of the in lieu fee. The developer has chosen to pay a fractional amount of the in lieu fee and deed restrict 5 units. These aren't necessarily, well, easement is, not necessarily consistency items, but kind of outliers that I just thought we should highlight in the conditions of approval. For consistency, the Liberty easement. So this project has been around for 3+ years, and we've gone through lots of iterations of it. The first routed iteration of this project just had parking and the landscaping in the Liberty easement. Liberty Utilities reviewed, gave us a letter that's included as an attachment about how it would need to be developed for them to allow it. Since then, it's changed a little bit. Now there's parking light standards there as well. So the condition of approval is that Liberty needs to, give their final written approval for any improvements that are located in the easement. We are working under an older development code. This was deemed complete in 2021. So that easement language says just written approval. It doesn't have the more advanced language of, it can never change, et cetera. So we're still working under that. Liberty will have to approve of any improvements that we permit. Condition of approval number 27 is an engineering condition of approval. As I mentioned earlier, the Winter Creek roadways are privately maintained due to their size. They were not accepted for maintenance by the town. So the applicant will need to contribute towards that maintenance or will have to solely fund that maintenance, depending on how it works out. But they will have to pay, they will have to participate in keeping the roads that they use for access to their project. And that's an engineering condition of approval number 27. So we'll switch gears to state density bonus law. We had a neighborhood meeting online in April to discuss the project and state density bonus law. So I've stolen those slides that I made for that meeting for this portion, but I thought it was worth discussing here in the public forum, in the public hearing. So let's talk a little bit about that. So since 2018, the state has passed hundreds of new housing laws. Many, if not most of these housing laws are aimed at removing barriers to housing construction, affordable or not. A lot of these laws take away, remove local control in the hope that that will assist a developer in producing more housing units to help the housing crisis. This could be from making things that used to go to a planning commission be staff level approvals, or removing the requirement for environmental review, removing standards that could really impede the building of housing units. The local jurisdictions must follow state law. That is how it works. And in jurisdictions where they don't, the state does proceed to litigate. So state density bonus law requires the town to grant a density bonus and incentives and concessions depending on the amount of affordability provided with the project. For Silver Creek, they're providing 13.8% of the housing units as deed restricted low income units. So one of the requirements is at least 10% restricted to low income. They're doing 13.8, so that qualifies them to proceed under state density bonus law. The way they determine how much bonus a project would get, it's a sliding scale depending on how many units are being provided. So if we look here, they're providing 13%, slide it over to low income, that is a 24.5% density bonus. So that would allow 45 units to be built on site. There could be an additional 9 units. The project is proposing 40 units, so using some of the density bonus, but not all. The state also requires the town to grant an incentive or concession, and the amount of incentives and concessions granted depends on how much affordability. For this project, the town is required to look at one concession and incentive. That is a request for the reduction of size of required private exterior space. These incentives concessions should be they should result in an identifiable and actual cost reduction. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The state also requires the town to not apply any development standard which would physically preclude the developer from building at their requested density. There are no limits on the amount of waivers and reductions a developer can ask for. There is no standard for either of these for the developer to prove that, for the incentive and concession, that it is financially, that it causes a financial issue or not. These waivers and reductions don't count as an incentive or concession, and the town is not required to grant them if they're contrary to public health and safety or state and federal law, among other things, which we'll talk about in the findings. As I mentioned, the project is asking for 4 waivers and 3 reductions. And as I mentioned before, the state, or maybe I didn't mention it yet, the state has maximum parking requirements that the town can require. This is the parking ratios. So using the state's methodology, the town can only require 48 parking spaces for this development, and none of them have to be covered. It just off-street parking spaces. The project is providing 72 spaces. So some requests for waivers or reductions that the town did not approve or grant were for snow storage, stormwater treatment, setbacks, solid waste requirements, and fire apparatus access, evacuation, egress, and ingress. The project was originally just a loop road with a single exit, and fire recently came in and said that couldn't happen, so they did just redesign to have 2 access points. So getting back to the project, the private exterior space. That is a requirement in our multifamily standards. Each unit should have a private balcony, deck, or patio, and then the development code talks about how large these should be. Buildings 1, 2, 5, and 8 do have patios and balconies, but they are smaller than required. And then, as I mentioned, the carriage unit buildings do not have any private exterior space. The applicant asserts that the reduction of this standard does result in an identifiable and actual cost reduction. So as I mentioned, there were findings to talk about whether or not you would grant an incentive or concession. So the commission is required to grant it unless it can make one of the following findings based on substantial evidence. That the concession is not consistent with density bonus, that the concession does not result in an identifiable, financially sufficient, and or actual cost reduction, that it's not required to provide affordable housing costs, that it would have a specific adverse impact upon public health and safety or the physical environment for which there is no way to mitigate or avoid, that it would have an adverse impact on historical resources, and that it would be contrary to state and federal law. As I mentioned in the staff report, there is an appellate court case, Schreiber versus City of Los Angeles, that determined, and this was in 2021, that determined that jurisdictions can't require pro formas or other documentation to prove that the incentive concession is required to reduce costs. If a jurisdiction wants to deny this, the jurisdiction would have to have the burden of proof. And since we're on the findings train, let's talk about waivers and reductions. These have very similar findings, with the exception that instead of cost reductions, we're looking at physically precluding the construction at the required density. But the same specific adverse impacts to historical resources, contrary to state or federal law. So if the commission is not comfortable with granting a waiver and reduction, these are the findings to look at in doing so. So these are the waivers and reductions that the applicant states would physically preclude development at the permitted densities. We have a waiver of our maximum coverage standard. 40% coverage is allowed for this parcel size in the RM zone district. 67.3% is proposed. A waiver of common recreational amenities. For the unit count, we would require 2 recreational amenities, and this is like a tot lot or a barbecue facility. None are proposed. A waiver of common usable open space. This would equate to 9,000 square feet. None is proposed. And a waiver to our zone district open space of 30% of the gross site area. Also, as I mentioned, reductions of parking lot interior landscaping, perimeter landscaping, and setback landscaping. There is still landscaping being proposed. It's just not in the amounts that the development code would require. And back to parking. The development code, if we were able to just apply development code standards, this project would result in a requirement of 85 parking spaces, with 35 of those spaces located in a garage. As I mentioned, the maximum the town can require is 48 spaces, and the project is providing 72 with 26 located in a garage. So is the project consistent with our development code? The answer is no. Is the project consistent with state density bonus law? The answer is yes. So the town is directed to follow state laws, and the density bonus law allows these deviations from the development code. As far as CEQA is concerned, staff is proposing the infill exemption. This is for projects that are consistent with applicable general plan designation, so high density residential, applicable general plan policies, the housing element policies that they are consistent with, the applicable zoning designation, multifamily, and regulations, not so much as we just spoke of, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. The proposed development is in town limits. It's no more than 5 acres and surrounded by urban uses. That's correct. No value for habitat for endangered, rare, threatened species. As I mentioned, the site was already reviewed in the MND for Winter Creek. It's a pretty disturbed site with some trees. There is no reason to believe that there's endangered, rare, or threatened species. Approval of the project would not result in any significant effects relating to traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality, and that it's adequately served by public utilities. So we'll address the traffic, noise, and air quality. So these are CEQA impacts. So under CEQA, there is VMT, so vehicle miles traveled, and under our general plan, which is a CEQA impact, or if it's applicable, is our level of service standards, so LOS. So this isn't a VMT exclusion zone. That means that it's already assumed to not have any significant impact. And then for traffic, there was a traffic analysis done last year, and that traffic analysis showed that the intersection level of service was adequate under all scenarios, that there wouldn't be queuing concerns, and that there's no additional turn lanes that are warranted. As for noise, the project will have to meet all of our noise ordinance requirements, construction times, et cetera. As for noise created by people living there, there was actually recently a Berkeley case where it was determined that people aren't impacts under CEQA, that noise from residents is not a noise impact. So noise would be construction noise, and that's handled through our ordinance. Air quality, same thing. We have standard conditions of approval that deal with air quality, dust suppression plan, making sure that there's not entrained dust. There's also no wood stoves allowed here, so no additional burning. So that would handle air quality, significant impacts, and water quality. All of their stormwater is being treated per our code and per the NPD's permit and going through a stormwater treatment facility. So that would remove any potential for significant impacts under CEQA. So I did mention to hold off a second. Yes, this project is not consistent with the applicable zoning regulations. So how can we use this CEQA infill exemption? Well, there was a court case in 2011 that was also in Berkeley, hotbed of CEQA court cases, that said that the infill exemption can be used for density bonus projects because they are considered consistent with the zoning, even with the waivers. And I apparently think that what they do is they insert state law and say, well, their state law says it's consistent because we're waiving it. So density bonus infill projects are what the state would like to see. And the state has kind of reiterated its stance on using this exemption with SB 149 and AB 1633, and really has been trying to close loopholes to use CEQA as a tool to deny housing on this basis. So have we had any public comment? The answer is yes. Lots of the public comment, I'm sure we'll hear from the public today, has revolved around the safety and the traffic issues, the snow storage, the lack of recreational amenities, the wetlands design, and that the town should not have to follow the state density bonus law. Scott Mathot, our senior civil engineer, is here. He's about to talk about the snow storage and the traffic. But I will say the recreational amenity, as staff discussed, it does seem to fit the waivers and reductions standard of the state density bonus law. The wetlands are far from, they're across Brockway, far from the project site. They don't even, wouldn't even, so 200 feet is where the town would require a minor use permit. They're farther than 200 feet. I have something. We actually, so for the the initial submittal, if you're close to a wetland, you either need to submit a minor use permit or you need to show that you're far enough away. So the engineer produced a diagram showing where the wetland was delineated and where the closest building is, which I do have in the slideshow that I could show later in discussion if you'd like. But it's not connected to the wetlands. There's no disturbance of the wetlands. It's not part of the wetlands. Our design guidelines are just guidelines. They're not standards. So while the project has some of our design standards with colors and as such, there's not a lot we can do in state density bonus on guidelines. And then, as you've heard from me, I believe that the town does need to follow state law. So I'm going to turn this over to Scott for his portion.
Great. Thanks, Chantal. Okay, so I've just prepared a couple quick slides to hopefully give a little bit more context to a couple of the public comment topics that we've been receiving. So snow storage being the first one. This is a kind of an expansion of what's in the Planning Commission packet. Just provides a little bit more clarity on the snow storage areas. So if you can see, each of the snow storage areas on this has a designated square footage call out for how much area is accommodated in each area. If you add up each one of those areas, there were some concerns that maybe those square footages weren't adding up to the total. Here, all of the square footages called out equals up to that, I believe it's 7463 held on site. So this is providing a little bit more context there. There's 2 ramped snow storage areas, which are allowed per the development code at the discretion of the town engineer. There's one on the southwest corner off of the west side of the south driveway, and then one on the north side of the northern driveway, 2 20 by 50 foot ramped areas, which account for twice the capacity in those areas just based on snow removal operations. So I can go into further detail if any of the planning commissioners have questions on this one. Next one is the traffic study. So we utilized LSE traffic consultants who does all of the traffic modeling in town, including for the 2040 general plan. Our threshold for the traffic study for requiring any kind of modifications or improvements to, say, the Winter Creek Loop and Brockway Road intersection would be based on, up in that upper right-hand corner, the 2025 general plan, circulation element policy 2.1, and then it was reestablished in the 2040 general plan, even though it doesn't apply to this one. It's not something that's gone away now. For unsignalized intersections, such as this one, where it's a side street stop control, that they can be allowed to reach a level of service F and they have to exceed 4 vehicle hours of delay. The table on the left, table 3, is from the traffic analysis, which shows, if you look, it's got existing year, which is obviously now. Future year is full build out of the community. We've got no project. Without the project, it would be a level of service C, so the kind of the middle column there. And then the right-hand column is with the project, with the additional 243 daily trips. It is still a level of service C, which is nowhere near our level of service F with 4 vehicle hours of delay. So results of the traffic study is that it would generate about 243 daily vehicle trips, with 34 occurring during the PM peak hour. If you think about that, it's about 1 trip less every 2+ minutes there, not like a constant stream of traffic. The study intersection level of service is adequate under all of the existing and future scenarios. There's no queuing concerns either on Brockway Road because of the left-hand turn pocket, or up Winter Creek Loop because of how far the closest driveway is, which is this and the Winter Creek Loop, other end of the loop. And then, so no additional turn lanes are warranted on Brockway because it's already been improved to have turn lanes on Brockway. Again, I can go into further detail on that later. Another concern has been kind of safety around the Winter Creek Loop and Brockway Road intersection there, both for pedestrians as well as kind of sight distance in the wintertime for vehicles. So I kind of broke this into a couple different colors to make it a little easier. So we've got Truckee Donner Regional Park over on the upper left-hand corner. We have the blue boxes are pedestrian improvements. So we have the Brockway Road Trail on the north side of Brockway Road. We have an improved 2-stage pedestrian crossing, which we've been implementing those whenever we're trying to improve pedestrian crossing. So that's kind of our latest and greatest type of pedestrian crossing there. We have a paved section on the south side that ties into the pedestrian trail that was built by the Winter Creek development back in the early 2000s, as well as we have pedestrian lighting there on the southeast corner of it, which is atypical for intersections in town. We have class 2 bike lanes on both sides of Brockway Road. For vehicles, for kind of that safety perspective, over 500 feet of sight distance in both directions up and down Brockway Road, because there's minimal vegetation on the south side there to impede that the sight distance triangles. There's some concerns about in the wintertime, snow storage kind of along the south side there causing issues. This is actually a better intersection than most in town based on the addition of the bike lanes on that south side. So there's 5 feet extra distance for snow to be pushed away from the roadway. And then with that raised pedestrian island, those are meant to be a traffic calming device, which is intended to, again, help kind of keep speeds at a lower speed than if there was no pedestrian crossing there. There's a left-hand turn pocket coming from the east to get into Winter Creek and to this site. And then whether you know it or not, the nose of the pedestrian crossing is actually set back about 25 feet to allow a car to stage there if they would like to before they enter out into that westbound traffic. So again, I can answer any questions if there's further that the Planning Commission has.
Thanks, Scott. So continuing on, I have one more thing. I did want to make a small change to the conditions of approval. As I mentioned, there has been many iterations of this project in the site plan, and I recently realized that the dimensions were taken off the solid waste enclosures and they seemed a little bit smaller. So I did want to add that the enclosures need to be at least 16 by 9 by 7 in order to fit all of the required implements. There's also a few track changes in the resolution. Coral caught a couple typos, and then when I went back to change them, I caught one. I caught a couple. So we can talk about that when we get towards resolution time. So to summarize, staff does support high-density housing as an appropriate use here on this site. Rental housing units in an infill location. This is something that the general plan, envisioned. This does help to implement the housing elements goals. What I listed is the not so good. Staff believes that these development standards for multifamily residential are important. That's why they're in our development code. They're important to provide livable, healthy communities, high quality communities. Staff believes that things like private exterior space, community amenities, and open space really increase the enjoyment and livability for residents in housing and higher density housing complexes, and probably for all residents in any type of housing, and that these standards are important to both the residents of the development and the surrounding community. However, the state is prioritizing the creation of housing units over project designs and sees some of these standards more as barriers to housing production. And as such, the project does meet the state density bonus law. It is, it does fall under that and is consistent with that. And for those reasons, staff is recommending adoption of resolution number 2408 with the staff requested change to condition 41 and the changes to the resolution that are in track changes, approving the following actions based on the recommended findings and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. And that's to first determine the project to be exempt with the class 32 exemption and to approve the development permit. Of course, there are always alternatives that the Planning Commission can take. That could be continuing the public hearing to date and time certain if the Planning Commission wanted to request additional information from the applicant or staff. The Commission can add, delete, or modify proposed conditions of approval. They could deny the project on the basis that the findings cannot be made, or the Commission could require additional environmental review. If anybody would like to appeal whatever decision the Planning Commission makes this evening, the appeal period would end Friday, May 31st at 5 p.m. And that is all I have for the commission. I believe the applicant's representative is here, but does not have a presentation and is available for questions.
Is that correct?
Good evening, Commissioners. Martin Wood, Principal with SCO Planning and Engineering. I'm here with Kay Radzik with Form Gray Architecture, and hopefully we can answer any questions. Just a couple things I wanted to indicate. Our role, we got involved in the project about a year ago. We kind of worked with staff. There was some refinements, if you will, that we went through the layout. One of them being snow storage. We worked hard to meet the town development code, so we modified some of the. We also, public safety item was fire department asking for the second access point, so we didn't want to sacrifice parking. We wanted to meet those requirements, and then worked through the grading requirements and the drainage requirements to meet the development code requirements. So public safety and some of those really important engineering standards that needed to be met, we went through the plan and refined that. So that's the plan that you see here tonight. And we're in full agreement. Appreciate Chantel's detailed staff report and presentation, as well as Scott for answering some of those questions. We did have about a 2-hour meeting with the neighborhood, and they asked a lot of good questions and have some concerns, and we tried to provide some good answers, where we could on why this should be approved and allowed. And we think it's a needed project in terms of housing for Truckee. And after, I guess, public comment, we're available to answer any questions and try to work through that with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Martin. All right, so I'm going to open up to for clarifying questions from the commission. How about if I start with Carl?
Chantal, do you happen to have a figure that shows where the wetland is?
Yes, one moment, please. So this is so as Martin mentioned, they came onto the project about a year ago. This was the former engineer on the project, and this was part of the original submittal. He overlaid the wetland delineation from 2002 and then drew distances.
Thank you. I don't have anything further on that. I do have a question. This is for just staff questions only right now, or can we also ask applicant questions? Or
We can
should
ask applicant
separate
also,
those?
right? Yeah. How about it?
I'm kind of wondering whether the design process included a consideration of possibility of including 3-story buildings on one or more of the buildings and some open space. And I'm not a builder, would that possibly result in a cost savings?
Yeah, we're trying to conform with the height requirements. That would have been something that we would have exceeded if we went another level. Terms of site coverage, it's a tight site. There's no denying that. What we did in going through the site is there is tricks in terms of trying to maximize parking, some of those things. That is a concern of the neighborhood is parking. We didn't want to sacrifice that. We don't want to have less parking. So those refinements in going through the parking and the access and the requirements that the fire department requires for public safety, there was refinements throughout the site plan, if you will, to meet the town's engineering standards and try to maximize the open space in the same time. So what we tried to do was create those landscaping pockets, create those setbacks, those view corridors where we could in this plan to make it the best plan possible with the density that we were allowed per state bonus.
Staff, is that correct? If it's a 3rd story, it would be over?
So I guess it depends on, it's 35 feet, or at this point, now it's 3 stories. It's 3.5 stories or 35 feet. So it just depends on the development. I'm not sure. I'm not a developer either.
Yeah, so shoot it, Martin. How would that be over?
Well, you'd end up with an extremely flat roof, and then you also have a site that is not flat. It does have topography crossing that. So based on the way that maximum height is calculated per the development code, I think we'd be pushing the limits of the 35-foot height requirement. So that's why we went, yeah. Is there anything you want to add, Kay, to that? I mean, that's,
No, in order,
yeah. You wanna-
I guess I need a microphone.
Yeah.
In order to maintain the architectural features of the high-pitched roofs and stuff, a 3rd story, the the roof would bring it over 35 feet.
How much?
And you have to, I don't know, would have to study that.
I mean, I'd like to get granular on that when it comes down to deliberating this. So if we could try and figure some of that out right now, staff, do we know what the top of the roof line is currently?
So it looks like figure 10 in the staff report has truss.
It's dependent on building. I think there are some height measurements in the exhibit, exhibit 1, but I don't have that. I can pull that up.
Let's take a look at it. I'd like to know what these buildings, where that top of that gable is, and get an idea of what other things could be done.
Can I add one more comment just on this topic of discussion? 3 stories isn't necessarily in keeping with the neighborhood also. I know that was some considerations when the project was originally laid out, as trying to create buildings that are in similar mass, size, scope, in keeping with the neighborhood. And I know the neighborhood had that consideration also. So I'm assuming there'd probably be some consideration where they wouldn't necessarily want 3 stories because it's not in keeping with what they built in the Winter Creek subdivision. The other thing that's also a negative in my view when you go 3 stories on some of these type of projects is the shadow cast on those things. These have tight setbacks. You go higher on that, in our Truckee environment where you're looking for more southern exposure and those type of sun things, the higher the building, that is also reduced. So those are other considerations just in terms of the original project and how it was conceived. So.
I'll leave my comment alone. What do you got, Dave?
I mostly have questions about the what can be done with the height of these buildings, and we can talk more about why I have those questions in deliberation. But that's it for now. I'd like to really just, like I said, get granular on where we are, on how tall these buildings are, and what is allowed, and what could be, an allowable variance.
So I have a side question then. Historically, for this project, has height ever been approached?
No.
So
Do you mean that have we, well, okay, yes, I guess that's, well, so we,
I can explain that.
I'll say Scott and I have asked, have suggested a redesign of this project multiple times. So not height specifically, but what can happen to make these waivers and reductions not necessary. We don't, under state density bonus law, we don't really have the ability to say, go redesign your project. There was a San Diego court case where the project San Diego basically said you can do a 3rd story or you can take out that amenity and you wouldn't have to have these standards reduced. And the case said no, what the developer is proposing is what the developer is proposing, and you work around that. So we've asked for site redesigns, we've asked for building redesigns. You see the carports and these covered walkways. We asked for a roof redesign so it wouldn't shed, but we don't have a lot of purview under state density bonus law to enforce those changes.
So the applicant hasn't been told you can't do 3 stories. You have to do 3 stories. There's no history in that. That's what
They're
I'm
meeting
asking.
the development standards. I mean, it's state density bonus. I think,
Right.
What's the amount that they could go over if they wanted? Like 30 feet, I think the state allows.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, they could go.
They can request a waiver from height and add to the list of waivers that they're requesting, or change them.
But the town can't require that, right? It can,
No.
So in looking at the elevations, the 2-story design is about 32 feet, just looking at the plans.
What page are you?
What are the plate heights of those interior spaces, living spaces? Maybe the architect can answer that quickly. 10-foot plate heights on the interior living spaces. 8 and 9 feet respectively.
Can you go to the mic if you're going to talk, just so that
Sorry.
our community members at home can hear also?
As it's designed, the ceilings are at 9 feet. So if you're asking about plate height, that's what it is.
That's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about
And then
from
you
this-
have to allow 12 to 16 inches for the floor joist.
I'm aware of that, yeah.
Yeah, the question for me would be from the mud sill to the top plate of the top floor.
To the top plate of the top floor.
Yeah, so from mud sill to the top plate of the top floor.
I think it says on that. It says 19 feet.
19 feet.
Okay, so 19 feet mud sill to the top plate. That's a tall gable. Okay.
It's a tall roof. Is that it for questions for
That's
now?
all I have for
Sammy?
questions. I mean, I feel like this is deliberating, but our hands are tied on a lot of this, but there's things
know,
I
I
want
get
to
it.
talk about.
Sammy, got anything?
No clarifying questions, but yes, deliberation, we are at that point.
So I've got a few for the applicant, I guess, or staff. Is there on-site management or off-site management? How's that handled? What's the laws? What can we require, not require?
I've put in conditions of approval that require management and a parking plan management.
But not on-site?
I don't believe we can require on-site management. I don't believe we can take up a unit and say it has to be required. That's not something we can do for a rental apartment project, but I am requiring that there is either management by the owner or a management company that we have information from, and then that the leases discuss the that there's no on-street parking in the neighborhood and that there is parking management, like assigned parking.
I did have a conversation with the owner about that very question today. Just asked him on the condition, and he said he was going to select a local property management company to manage the project. So that was his intent.
So as part of our condition, is there anybody checking, like, so they get a management company for 5 years and then they get in an argument and disappears, then what happens?
They would be in violation of their conditions of approval, so it would move to code compliance. Our code officers work, there's, other rental apartments in town, our rental complexes, and our code officers work with those rental places all the time.
Is this project taking any financing from state or federal grants?
Not that we're aware of.
So that would eliminate the necessity of Section 8?
Yes, I mean they're not doing any tax credit or anything like that. These are just standard inclusionary, low income, 60% of AMI
But
units.
to be clear, too, Section 8 housing has different options within that. So although what we've heard more commonly in Truckee is like the vouchers that we have at the artist lofts, which are specific to that project, a property owner can choose to accept Section 8 vouchers to replace rental income. So that could be in any unit, whether it's a single family or multifamily. So I just want to be clear that
I appreciate that.
that can happen in any neighborhood.
However, it's not required as opposed to the artist lofts.
No.
So then my next question is, the remaining 35 units are all going to be market-based rent. Is that correct?
36 market rate units 30.
35.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry. 35 and then, yes, correct.
I can do my math.
Yeah, apparently I can't.
This is for staff. Is that intersection, for Scott specifically, the intersection where it goes across the mid-island, so it's a two-step process, is that striped?
No, it is not currently striped.
How do we get that to be striped?
You could provide a recommendation to the town engineer to start striping it.
We can do that as part of this, right?
You can. We can take into consideration.
Okay.
Mitch, I have another question kind of related to that.
Sure.
Did the project consider, putting in a signalized crosswalk there? I don't know if that would be inconsistent with the town kind of roadway design, or just like a button that flashes to let people know pedestrians are crossing.
Sure. So the current direction on when we introduce rapid flashing beacons at crosswalks is near school zones. So along Donner Pass Road, we have them through that section, and then at hospitals. So that's why you see those along Donner Pass Road. That's our current approach, just based on the town engineer's determination, but we can always provide a recommendation. There's a similar recommendation provided for the Rocker Memorial Skate Park a couple years back. to provide one along a States Drive that's being considered by the town engineer.
So the one that's over there by the existing mobile home park that goes across to where the golf course is, doesn't have one of those there?
Nope.
I thought it did.
They're all three of the crossings of Brockway Road are all lit from the center islands, but not rapid flashing beacons.
So we could ask, due to the fact that it's a recreation center, we could request it?
You could request it. It's under the purview of the town engineer based on town council's release of that jurisdiction to the town engineer. So you could provide a recommendation.
Sorry, is that something we attach to this resolution or just a separate recommendation we make procedurally? How do we do that?
As part of the other one I mentioned, it was part of the condition of approval.
Yeah.
So
Attach it to this.
Attach it to this.
I have one other one, Mitch.
What was that? Go.
I have one other one.
Have at it.
You inspired me. So based on, the intent is to hire a local property management company to manage the site or the development once built. Is there a way, I mean, I know, and I don't necessarily agree that it would be a problem, but since they are rental units, would there be a way to put in a minimum lease term or lease length into the lease, like 6 months or 12 months, to maybe assuage some of the fears that constant turnover would be problematic in the neighborhood?
I don't believe that the town has the ability to require that. The only thing we can require is that it's not short-term rentals, so it would be 30-day or more, 31 days.
Okay, next is public comment, but before we get there, there's a few things I need to say. A, we need you to sign in. There should be a sign-in sheet back against the wall, then give that over to Kaylee here to my left, your right. I'm going to ask you all to queue up. I am also going to mention it's not helpful to repeat what your neighbors are saying over and over and over again. We know there's a snow storage concern. We know there's a safety issue relying to that. So if you agree with Mrs. Jones, I would suggest you say, I agree with Mrs. Jones. This gives you your chance to get up and speak. However, myself personally, I'm not going to speak for my other commissioners, but when I hear the same thing over and over and over again, I start to glaze over. So it would be convenient and helpful for all of us, I think, if you make your point and then the next person says, I agree with Mrs. Jones and Mr. Smith on these 2 points. With that, if you could fill out your forms and queue up, it's time. You have 3 minutes. You will be timed. There's a timer right there. I'd keep your eye on it if I was you.
Chair Claren, can I provide just a little bit more context on the crossings?
Yes.
So the reasons for striped or unstriped crossings, there's some different opinions on how and when to stripe crosswalks.
Not a surprise.
And when to do rapid flashing beacons as well.
Right.
There's one opinion, one professional body of opinions that thinks that when you do provide rapid flashing beacons or markings in crosswalks, especially on like a 45-mile-an-hour road, that provides a perception of safety that may not be, the driver might not actually be aware of that person. So it puts a little bit more onus on the person trying to cross the road to make sure that they have appropriate time to get across it. As opposed to if you put a rapid flashing beacon in, most people think I hit the flashing beacon, I see a car coming, they're going to stop no matter what. And it's not necessarily the case, and that's how the accidents happen in crosswalks. So just want that to be at least on your mind of why we haven't been implementing rapid flashing beacons everywhere and or striping every single crosswalk, because there's a not necessarily true sense of protection in those crosswalks.
You don't have any definite numbers that relate to that, do you? Like, there's no survey that says unstriped crosswalks are more dangerous than striped crosswalks?
Not necessarily.
So there is a perception amongst the public that it's safer.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Do we know if this is on? We do.
It's on.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. My name's Michelle Cossage, and I'm the president of the Winter Creek Homeowners Association. I have submitted 5 items today. It says 8. I submitted 5 items today to the Planning Commission for the public comment on behalf of the Board of Directors, that we have a fiduciary responsibility to look at the things that are around health and safety and our CCNRs. It's our role as the HOA Board of Directors to preserve, protect, and to enhance our property value. Conversely, I understand what your role is, that your mission as town council is to create the best future for our community by providing the highest level of public service. The quality of life and success of Truckee is dependent upon our partnership. To that end, I wanted to say that we really want to partner with you and the applicant, but we see significant gaps in the plan for Silver Creek, which many of our owners are planning to comment on tonight. We are realistic as we anticipate something will be developed in this parcel. As a matter of fact, our owners signed a disclosure when they purchased their home that there would be a 20 or 25 unit condo or townhouse that would be built there. But now, for whatever reason, after this applicant has owned this land for 4 years, suddenly Neptune Investment LLC and the Planning Commission have suddenly fast-tracked it as far as from our perspective. I have had a committee assigned working with Chantel. I'd like to not take my 3 minutes to say that it's been a great partnership with Chantel and the great work that she has done. But needless to say, suddenly this has gotten fast-tracked, giving us limited time to articulate and get our resolutions about the health and safety situations that are going to affect us and have a mitigation plan. We're greatly concerned about this project, and we have zero interaction with the applicant. Zero. The town of Truckee is putting the burden on us, the HOA, to develop a joint use agreement, and we have no way of knowing if the applicant will negotiate in good faith, and this puts us in a litigious position. At last, the town has put a condition number 27 at our doorstep, and we believe the needs need to be, that this development needs to have additional conditions. This project is really lacking in several areas. The 5 items that I put in my documentation covers parking safety and parking enforcement. The intersection of traffic that goes through our development, we believe that you have not included the correct roads. The safety issues with the applicant about crossing Brockway and taking in consideration that the snow and the blockage and the height of the snow, and then lastly, snow storage.
That's your time. Sorry.
My name is Derek Iverson, and I'm a full-time resident at Winter Creek. And my biggest concern is about the Silver Creek development is the health and safety issues related to the waivers. And those are the common recreational amenity, the required open space of 30%, and the common usable open space of 200 square feet per unit. The developer suggests that residents have access to the Truckee River Regional Park as an alternative. While we're lucky to have such a wonderful park close by and serviced by well-maintained walking and biking trails, to access the Truckee River Children's Playground, it requires children and families to cross Old Brockway Road. Speed limit of 45 miles an hour and without pedestrian lights, has light but no pedestrian lights or signage to make the crossing safe. The children and families also need to cross the entry to Winter Creek Loop, and the traffic study indicated that during peak times, it was a 261% increase in traffic ingress and egress during that measurement time. So not only do I think there's a serious safety risk associated with development, it's also common sense that future residents of this need on-property recreational facilities and open space. And the proposal that children and families will cross Old Brockway to access open space is inadequate and dangerous. So please don't approve the current proposal until this has been addressed. Next concern is related to lack of snow storage. The acknowledged requirement is to haul off 4,712 square feet. This means the development has less than 62% of the storage required. And the reason the haul off isn't workable is because off-haul doesn't stop the snow from falling, and off-haul will take a day or more to accomplish. And with 38% more snow on the ground physically, it's unavoidable. It'll be an ongoing burden for not only the residents of Silver Creek and Winter Creek, because the development will be paralyzed with this unpreventable reality. So there must be appropriate storage within the development to handle the snow events when they occur, not days afterwards. So not only is that a safety concern, but the heavy equipment will be blocking the roads to and from as they are clearing out the roads. And so that's also a serious of concern. So please don't approve the development of this currently proposed until this perpetual and serious snow storage disaster is going to be solved. And so that's it. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bruce Starkweather. I'm a part-time resident at Winter Creek, having resided in Sacramento as an architect for many years. I come to speak both as a licensed architect, but also as a person that was involved in the charter member of the City of Sacramento Development Oversight Commission that rewrote the regulations for Sacramento for 8 years and served as vice chair of their general plan. I understand the public engagement piece, and I've been, in my letter, I raised great concern about the engagement aspect of this. To the credit of the staff, they have been attempting for years to answer our issues. But even in the video that, a session that Chantel did for us, it was quite apparent that the deal was done. And so there was rather superficial, not from the staff, but from the applicant side, that we're just marching to the end. And all this did was reinforce the distrust that has existed, which is the crux of this whole issue. There's been no outreach, no engagement from the applicant for years. We've written letters, we've been involved to try to answer this, and then we're given 6 days to digest all of that information that got dumped online the other day for our 147 residents. It's a mighty task. So I have asked in my material for you to please stop the train for a moment. I've heard you already start to ask your own questions, and let's deliberate and work together. As an architect, I was used to working on projects where we were fully engaged, applicants, neighbors. I went to the Gravity House, the one right next door to ours. They got no notice. The manager of that told me he hadn't heard a thing about it. I'm sure the address was sent to their corporate office out of state. And so one of the critical neighbors to this was shocked to find that this was happening. No announcements, and I really seriously think that is at the crux. We distrust the process so far. So I ask you again, stop the train. There are serious questions that I think need, because it can be resolved. This height issue, the density issue. As an architect, there are so many ways to approach this thing. Thank you for asking that question. I look at that site and go, it's being denuded of every tree on it. It has a cross-section that is excessive. And to the credit, they're trying to jam all this stuff on there. It's 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag, not an 8-pound bag. And something's got to give. And in any good design solution that will last time is something that we want. I do not want an expedient solution because of the state's threat to you guys, which is invalid, and somebody's got to challenge that. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm John Kedzie. I'm a resident, Rotarian. And one of the things that occurred to me when we were talking about this park across the street of Brockway, the builder's allowed to claim it as an exception, but he doesn't have to make it safe. Can't we ask him to make it safe? Put a light there, do something to make it safe for those residents? This project calls for 40 units, only 5 of which are low income, and the balance are 30-day minimum rental units, which are market rate. Are those going to be affordable to local residents of Truckee? Has anybody checked? Do we know? Is there any requirement for that? Or can people come from out of the area and take those places? Is that helping Truckee, if it does? Traffic considerations. I looked at the traffic report. It looks like somebody sat on a corner from 3 to 6 p.m. one afternoon and measured cars, when the real bottleneck's going to be at rush hour in the morning, coming out of that unit, 60 or 70 cars trying to get onto Brockway. And they're going to be jammed there, and they're going to have to go divert through the other exit through Winter Creek, because that's what I would do. And that's really the only way you get out of there, because traffic on Brockway is excessive in the morning, especially during ski season. So I think the traffic study is faulty, or at least incomplete, and I think it needs to be done more realistically. The doubling of the traffic in our community can't be viewed as insignificant, so it makes no sense. I support the original plan, 20 townhomes. Having ownership there is different than rental units. Having no on-site manager is asking for trouble, and we have to live with this for the next 20, 30 years. So the decisions you make today are going to impact us for a long time. So why are we rushing? Let's take our time and do the due diligence. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Visual here, just
I need you to speak into the mic.
I'll put this up here, or maybe Derek can hold it. Hi, Michael Kane, current full-time resident, Winter Creek. I've lived in Truckee over half my life, consider myself a viable member of the community, and have been living in this neighborhood since 2006, raised my family here, and largely live here because of its proximity and location. It's a great neighborhood, it's desirable, and being part of the original development, I was well aware that 25 units were scheduled to be there. Obviously, it's changed. So looking at that, there's obviously two aspects here, and I know everybody's got something to touch on. There's a physical map that we're looking at here, and there's also a cultural geography here. The town of Truckee likes to promote itself as Base Camp for Life, or Truckee Love, or whatever slogans are going here, and it seems like I agree with my neighborhood members. Jamming this in is not adhering to what we want to do as a town to allow projects. It is really mind-blowing that our hands are tied for the state. That being said, I'm not going to touch too much on snow removal. I know Scotty touched on it, and we had a conversation with him today. We had some discrepancy. We did some math on this, and we were informed that these areas here can be ramped. And I am currently the superintendent of maintenance and facilities at the Tahoe Donner Association, and I manage a lot of snow removal. And I have one facility that is quite similar to this, which is the cross-country ski area, which is bound on all sides by a wetland, and everything has to be back-dragged and sometimes off-hauled. And if I'm taking this approach, I'm moving snow all the way up to here. Snow doesn't fit in a geometric shape like this. As ramping occurs, the ramp zones that they were saying, this splays out, this splays out, this splays out. So the effect of the ramping associated with this neighborhood is going to introduce a ton of heavy, once the ramping is done, if the ramping is done successfully, and there's no science to ramping, it's the make of the snow, the water density of the snow. Some years you can't ramp if it's light. So what do? So this snow then all spills over to our side. This snow in the yellow areas is also concurrent with their landscaping plan. So their snow storage facilities are going to ruin their landscaping, therefore the aesthetics of the neighborhood are constantly going to be damaged along that run. And if the Winter Creek Association ever wanted to put a fence in, which we could on our property, constant damage to said fencing. My concern is the conundrum right here with the snow removal equipment and needed. And also, in our first meeting, there's garbage off-haul twice a week. Dump truck comes in, dumpster. So now we're introducing, on a big winter, 20 new heavy equipment vehicles into this small zone to back drag and try and get all this yellow area either to stay on their property or off haul. And I don't think it's a conceivable plan. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marion Ingersoll. My address is 10046 Winter Creek Loop. I'm across the street from the proposed Silver Creek Estates development. within eyesight of it. And I would agree with all of the points that my neighbors have made, and I won't even try to go deep on the snow problems, but I entirely support those comments before me and would make two new comments. One is to emphasize that the Winter Creek roads are very narrow, and that will compound the snow removal problems. There isn't even a solution planned. Off-haul is not realistic and will likely lead to gridlock and compromised safety for residents both of Silver Creek and of Winter Creek. My second point is to address the CEQA review. And I would encourage the commission to do a full environmental assessment, including a CEQA review. It was mentioned in the preliminary comments that there's a case from Berkeley showing that holding that the infill exemption can be used. And I'm quoting a neighbor in saying that can be used doesn't mean you should or must. Berkeley is very different from Truckee. And I think the facts of any case involving Berkeley will be very different from what is called infill here, but is really a much different environment. We have wetlands on both sides of Brockway. This development is proximate to a major wetland on the Winter Creek side of Brockway, in addition to the wetland on the river side. So those are my 2 points. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Hi, my name's Suzette Birnbaum, and I'm a homeowner in Winter Creek. And I have several concerns. I support everybody that's already spoken. My point is something I don't think has been addressed yet at all. I have a son with Down syndrome. I helped start a adult day program in Truckee, which we were lacking. I have started Special Olympics in Truckee, which we were lacking. I have started special needs dance classes that were non-existent, as well as special needs. My goal for our community is we have a lot of special needs young adults and children coming up the ranks, is to create a space in Truckee that they feel comfortable in. Teddy has many friends and he was on a wait list for the Artist Loft, and it's a complete disaster. His best friend lived next door to somebody who created a meth lab, and it was because those low-income houses that were were available to them, people came from Sacramento. I took them off the list. The senior center is our only other option for him, and now we have pedophiles there. There is nothing for these young adults, nothing. Me personally, I'm trying to create something. I'm trying to create a home for them to live in that's safe, with safe staff. My biggest concern when this whole thing came was everything that everybody's already spoken about was mainly about these guys. Because the spaces that have been created and all this jam-packed, compact living in the artist loft that was supposed to be 2 floors is now 3, has ruined our view of the range, and it's brought in people that are undesirable. It's brought in motorhomes and campers that are sitting there. I've taken these kids that live there, they've all moved out. They've all moved to the artist loft. My concern is with this project, and there's 5, I think maybe there'll be more in the future, I don't know, that the clientele that's coming in is not safe for our community. And there is no place for these guys to live. That is one of my very big concerns. Also, something really beautiful that happened to our Winter Creek neighborhood during COVID was everybody came out of their houses. In my front yard, we have lawn. I set out art tables. Kids flocked to the lawn. We did art. We were able to communicate. We walked around. Other houses had lemonade stands. It was like the 50s and 60s when I grew up, 70s, where people came out of their homes and we were a community. And it was safe. People could walk around. They could have wine night. They could have, outdoor movie night. I feel like with all this added extra people is going to change the environment greatly. And I really hope that you'll listen to everybody's concerns and take it all into consideration, because we all live here and we all love it, and we want the safety and the beauty to remain. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brad Chisholm. I've lived in this area most of my life, living in Truckee since 1998. 1998 and Winter Creek since 2016. My wife is a public school teacher here in Truckee. Both my kids graduated from Truckee High, and I'm a local fire chief. And I mention this solely to give you an idea of the demographics of the residents in Winter Creek. Winter Creek, like many areas, neighborhoods in Truckee, is a thriving neighborhood. It has many full-time residents, parents who work locally, nurses, teachers, mechanics, doctors, firefighters, etc. The kids attend local schools and participate in local athletic programs. It's a bustling community. Kids ride their bikes and skateboards, lemonade stands, play catch, jump rope, make chalk art in the streets and driveways, and making snow sculptures throughout the winter. And the parents are out as well, watching over the kids, walking dogs, block gatherings, yard work, visiting the lending library, and socializing. It's a small neighborhood, but from a community aspect, it is quite similar to neighborhoods in Truckee that collectively contribute to what defines Truckee. There are, however, two critical things that make Winter Creek unique. One is the location situated at the corner of Palisades Drive and Brockway Road, with the neighborhood access off both. And two, it has very narrow streets, as has been mentioned. Both of these are by design and result in a convenient and attractive neighborhood, but more importantly, a safe neighborhood. But this is only the case with the development taking place within the parameters that govern how Winter Creek was built out. Winter Creek has already had to put in engineering controls in place due to motorists shortcutting and speeding through the neighborhood. On a daily basis, we now see many kids on e-bikes that easily exceed our neighborhood speed limits, shortcutting through as well. Switching gears a little bit, I do appreciate the commission's acknowledgement of the artist lofts, and maybe that was from some of the previous submissions, but I appreciate that being on your radar. I will touch on a couple things with that. Anyone who's been paying attention to the artist loft knows that it's come well short of its expectations. One example of the impact of it is the public records request that shows from January 1st, 2021 through current Truckee Fire District responded to the artist loft 70 times. That's a significant amount. Essentially, there are two types of responses, EMS and fire. An EMS response includes an engine, an ambulance, and a battalion chief. A fire response includes an engine, an ambulance, a battalion chief, and a truck. Oftentimes, Truckee PD will respond as well. I understand that there's two means of egress for this development, and I trust that Truckee Fire did their due diligence in providing that. But regardless, that's a significant amount of apparatus in a very minimal space. Given the snow storage conditions, the excessive parking, or the minimal parking and excessive number of cars, adequately deploying resources in that is somewhat of concern. Silver Creek Estates, as proposed, is community-wide impact. It unnecessarily compromises safety. Members of the Planning Commission have the say in addressing this. Thank you.
G'day, my name's Doug Yude. I moved up here in 2020. I'm a full-time resident in Winter Creek, about 5 houses up from this proposed development. I think my main concerns is, as a few others have mentioned, the traffic study seems to be woefully lacking or borderline incompetent. I don't know I don't know how that passed muster. The concerns we have is mostly for if that traffic study is indeed incorrect, that many of the traffic will actually be going through the Truckee streets, and that presents a safety issue for many of the families, including mine. My daughter rides her bike in the street, as do many of the other kids, and it's a bustling neighborhood, as others have mentioned. These roads are narrow enough that, especially during winter, they're effectively one-way roads, and you have to pull into a neighbor's driveway to be able to pass cars. We have no ability to enforce parking restrictions in there because it's sort of a public road that's privately maintained. So the Truckee, police won't allow us to tow any vehicles or that kind of thing. So enforcement of any of the issues caused by this new development is going to be damn near impossible. Our expectation is that basically, because the Brockway Road is so difficult to turn left or right, especially during winter, during ski season, that is basically a parking lot, or worse, 45-mile-an-hour cars with massive 10-foot snow banks, and you can't see out that intersection to turn left. We've already had 2 accidents, I think, this year on that intersection. One car smashed into one of the rocks in the middle of the road, pushed the rock onto oncoming traffic, and another Prius hit that rock that had moved. So like that's to give you an idea that intersection is fairly dangerous, and it's also where all of the children are supposed to go to cross the street. So in my mind, if this is to go ahead, we need to have serious changes to the roadway in Winter Creek. So that might include things like putting up gates or turning the streets one way, or at the very minimum, putting a set of traffic lights at that Brockway Road intersection, and all of which should be at the cost of this new development who's causing these issues. However, like we've suggested some of these changes in the past and had exactly zero feedback or interaction with the developer. The developer's not here today either, I would note. So I don't understand why we're pushing so heavily to push this thing through despite the obvious kind of safety concerns and traffic concerns that we all have. Thank you.
Might get a little more dark here, but I'm going to make this known. Hi, my name is Matt Carrera. I'm here with my wife, Nicole, our daughter, Elle, who just turned 10, and our youngest, Eden, who is 6. We're just one of the many families who are proud to call Winter Creek our home. And we stand before you today because we never imagined that purchasing a house in our quaint Truckee community would directly put our children's lives in serious danger. But that's exactly what this proposed Silver Creek development will do. As you hopefully are now well aware, the streets in our Winter Creek development are significantly more narrow than other Truckee streets. This creates a uniquely perilous situation, especially in the winter, when the snowbanks turn our streets into icy one-lane roads, chock full of blind driveways. At the current occupancy, there are already close calls between speeding cars that are visiting the neighborhood and children and pets. And there have been multiple car accidents within the development this year because of that reason. Now, with the development, they're saying they're going to allow 2 cars per occupancy, which means giving 80 more cars direct access to our roads, creating an exponentially more dangerous situation. And I want to make sure that I'm on record so that you, our appointed and elected officials, and the town of Truckee cannot deny guilt when the worst case scenario occurs. If this development is allowed to go forward, someone will get seriously injured or die. That will be a direct result of the town's and your disregard for the tremendous safety concerns we as a group are raising today. Now, I could not be more proud to call Truckee home, and we can say with 100% certainty that none of us here are anti-development. We understand that California and Truckee have unique housing concerns and issues that need to be solved, but let's be real. 5 low-income units and 35 market-rate rentals will not address any of it. It is our request that you reject this proposal and treat this as a starting point of a larger conversation that will ensure all of our concerns are addressed. And on top of that, we'd also like to invite all of you to Winter Creek so that you can see firsthand some of the issues that we've raised today. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to hosting you at your earliest convenience.
Thank you for your time. My name is Sebastian Boyfort, and I'm a part-time resident at Winter Creek. I've submitted 2 public comments on the Planning Commission's website. I'm an engineer by training. I'm not a professional civil engineer. I am an aerospace engineer. I have a master's degree, which means I can do math. So my comments are going to be a little bit technical. I would like to request the permission to give you guys a handout, which is exactly the same thing that I've published on the website. Is that okay? So let me pass those to you. So my comments are focused on the snow storage situation. And I would like to point out that basically we are already pushing the envelope in terms of the snow storage with this project. So there's one number I would like to highlight on the sheet I give you, the on-site snow storage, which is calculated to be 76, 73 square feet as per the developer and the town engineer. In reality, this area is not equal to 76, 73. The actual physical space is the number highlighted in the table below, which is 5,670. So there's a difference of 2,000 square feet. So maybe backing up a second, if we look at the actual physical footprint of the snow storage area, the 5,670 square feet that's available, the project does not meet the building code section, bear with me, 130, because it does not have 50% on-site snow storage. These are the facts. However, the town engineer, according to the building code, has the ability to grant a waiver to the developer. In this case, the town engineer has given a waiver worth 2,000 square feet, which is basically the fact that there's ramped areas that can count as 2x the actual physical areas. So the 2,000 square feet becomes 4,000 square feet. I believe this is pushing the limit. Number two, I would like to point out there's also snow load assumptions are being used for this parcel, 179 pound of snow per square foot. If we use snow loads from Ponderosa Road, which is half a mile, the number is 210. If that number is used, again, the requirement increases to 75% on-site snow storage, which is, again, this project would fail even more massively, the snow storage requirements. Finally, because we're going to haul the snow, 60% of the snow is going to have to be hauled, I think we should do a CEQA to analyze the impact of all those trucks polluting our streets. And this is all I have. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jai Gohill. I live at 10633 Winter Creek Loop with my family. The reason that's important is we're directly across. We're the first house as you come in off of Brockway. So we're in a unique perch looking out of our dining room on the traffic. And I want to make a few observations based on the position of our house and then make some comments. First, with respect to the traffic study, I'm sorry, I don't know where they get these. It is absolutely, completely erroneous. There are traffic jams up Brockway in the winter. Was this done at winter when there was 10-foot, which was for the last 2 winters, 10-foot berms on both sides? There's no way this traffic study is accurate. I understand you go to whoever the guy does that sits out there for 3 hours in June. What about in February on a Saturday morning or on the weekends? Number two, and with respect to snow removal, I'll just make a little comment. Just on our property, the snow berm is so high that I've almost been run into maybe by some neighbors. It's not their fault. It's blind. On that intersection, not on Brockway. It is incredibly dangerous in the winter. Third, parking. This clearly is a development that's just to maximize a Southern California developer, maximizing he doesn't live here, doesn't come to the meeting. I understand he brought his representative, who's an architect. What this is maximizing profits. These parking spots are going to be an issue. There's 30-day rentals. We have no idea how many people are going to live in these tiny units. It could be 6, 7 people sometimes living in there. 72 parking spaces sounds like a lot, but think that there are no spaces anywhere within, I'm going to say, close to half a mile or at least a quarter of a mile that you can park that's not on Winter Creek, which is illegal, or at you'd have to go way far up Brockway or somewhere on Palisades where it's limited. I'm an attorney. I'm a trial attorney. I've tried over 100 trials. I only bring that up. I mainly do criminal defense cases, but I've also done civil cases against and taken them to trial against municipal entities. A little free legal advice. Why don't we slow this down? Here's what a very smart, and I know some plaintiff lawyer is going to do to the town of Truckee. He's going to say, you get immunity if you exercise your discretion. Fast tracking this because you're afraid of the state law and not taking time to actually use discretion. Listen to all the comments of the community. Then we're going to end up in a position where you're just rubber stamping, which is called ministerial. The case law is clear. When the town of Truckee, its developers, its elected officials, its employees just act ministerially to rubber stamp projects and don't exercise discretion, which is what our community is asking you to do here. I'm just telling you, somebody's going to die And the town of Truckee is going to be is going to be a defendant. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan Mandel. I live at the top of Winter Creek. I was going to read this because Linda Radler wrote it, but she's not here. But I'm just going to talk off the top of my head since I've lived there in the last 7 years, and I'm sitting here. I think there's 9 children, 9 little kids that live at the top of Upper Loop, and Indy and Charlie yell across each other. They're running across the street all the time. They're like best friends. And then I've got kids who ride that bike down. They ride their bikes down that steep street, and we're all cool with it because we know these kids. My dog lays out in the middle of the street, Sunny, and everybody has to go around Sunny, but everybody's okay with it. And she's a big golden retriever. She lays across the street. These kids are on their bikes. I went 15 miles an hour, and somebody flew out of their driveway, and luckily I was going slow enough. You know, I'm very careful. We all know each other. We all take care of each other, and I'm fine with these kids all over the street all the time, but I'm thinking with more than 72 cars, no one's going to want to wait at Brockway. They're all going to go to Palisades, and there's 3 ways to get to Palisades to get out of here, and I'm so concerned. You know, we've got 4 of those plastic things that say to slow down with the flags, and we're yelling at people, and everybody kind of gets it now. So I think my main concern is all the traffic that's going to impact all those streets and all those kids who, you know, they're kids. They're going to run out in the middle of the street. They don't know any better. So that's my big concern. I was hoping you would just like slow down on this and not push it through right now. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Selah Carriot, and I'm a 14-year resident of Winter Creek. I built my home in the South Bay, and I had a plan which met every single regulation for the city. Every setback, every height requirement, every other requirement. I had a neighbor who believed that the only kind of house that should be built there is a Cape Cod. And believe it or not, the Planning Commission turned down my plan. So I do know that you have the discretion to do these things. Whether or not it meets the letter of every single, if every box is checked, I mean, there's some evidence that it's not the case, and you guys should study that. But even if every box is checked, you do have the discretion, and that's your power. And so therefore, you should use it wisely. Winter Creek is a 40-acre development with 147 dwelling units. Silver Creek is a 1.7-acre parcel with 40 dwelling units. Winter Creek itself has problems. We have problems with parking. People have described. When the snow is very high, it's a 1-lane icy road. The HOA has prevented parking on any street because cars simply can't get around it. So we have a lot of problems with having a far less dense situation with cars, with parking, with pedestrians. So you can only imagine, extrapolate from that, if I increase the density by 6.5%, what problems I'm going to create. So I think it's a matter of common sense. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vinod Karyat, and along with my wife Selah, we've lived in Winter Creek part-time since 2010 for 14 years. I want to talk a little bit about pedestrian safety. I really appreciate that Truckee is a pedestrian-safe, pedestrian-friendly city or town, let me say. You installed the new paths, which are all great. We very much enjoy walking our dogs. But let me tell you, in winter, I walk my dog around Winter Creek at night, and the roads are very narrow and icy and dark. The only reason we can do that is because the amount of traffic is reasonable. I also we've used the crossing at Brockway Road. And when there is high traffic, it usually takes us 5 to 10 minutes to get across, to wait for the traffic, for somebody to stop. Otherwise, you cannot cross. And even then, or you have to make a mad dash. You look at the car coming up 5 miles up at the hill, and you make a mad dash across the intersection. Now, there is no provision for recreational space in this new development. where are all those people going to go? The town and the developer says go across Brockway Road to the Truckee Regional Park. Let me tell you, with the current situation, that is untenable. It will lead to accidents. It'll lead to high risk for all of the people who are attempting to do that, and all of the kids who may try to cross that or cross on a bike, etc. And secondly, even within the Truckee, within our Winter Creek neighborhood, like many of us have said, we believe there will be a significant amount of traffic flowing out of this new development unless there is a light or other controlling device that will allow the traffic to egress onto Brockway Road. So I request the town and you to take these into consideration, deliberate carefully, use your responsibility and your discretion, and take the time to work with the developer and with the town to have a feasible plan. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Daryl Hensel, and I live at 10615 Winter Creek Loop, which is 3 doors down from the gentleman who lives across the street from the development. I bought my home 3 years ago, and I was very aware that there could be a 25-unit condo townhouse development that would go into that space. I made the decision because I loved the home. I loved the proximity to downtown Truckee, and yes, I did buy at the top of the market. So that all of that doesn't concern me. I said I want to buy, and if 20 units go in here and they're condos, that's it. I love this place. I love the community. I love your Truckee way and what you've done with the town of Truckee. My greatest concern is the precedent that it sets should a urban-like, high-density apartment dwelling go in at Winter Creek or anywhere in Truckee, because should it go in there, it can go in Old Greenwood, I think that's what it's called, Gray's Crossing, Lahontan, Martis Landing, unless they're all private. It can go anywhere. And the owner of this land is Neptune Investments Company, or LLC. And so I looked that up to figure out, well, what are they doing? Why would they want to do this? Are they planning to flip this to Vail Resorts or Alterra for their J1s, which, that would be the worst of our worries because at least they don't have any cars. But then I'm thinking, well, or, their company is a finance company, so I know he's not going to live there. I know he doesn't have any property management stuff going on there. I'm sure they haven't even thought to negotiate with the Winter Creek Homeowners Association concerning not just maintaining the roads for snow removal, but maintaining the roads for wear and tear. So we have these big issues there, and there's no transparency. I mean, no one will talk to us. The owner won't talk to us. I guess he doesn't have to. I don't know. But is that the community spirit we want in Truckee? He's also putting in a development in Kings Beach right now, and that's proceeding as well. And so he's a real estate guy. So if he's going to grab property all over Truckee and he's using this state mandate to railroad things through, we have a bigger issue than just Silver Creek. It's our community. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for listening to all of this. My name is Joe Smith. I've been a resident in Winter Creek for almost 9 years. A lot of you have probably seen me out there snowshoeing and sledding with our grandkids. I probably spend more time on those roads than most. It's kind of laughable to me, although this is a serious subject, because we have pretty good plow service. Michelle and the board has done a great job getting us somebody out there. The plow comes through frequently, and still, with these last 2 or 3 winters, there's not much room on those roads. So I look at this, this project, it kind of makes me laugh. So number one, the guy that's running this, he needs to go ahead and plan having a front end loader and a dump truck in the parking lot all the time during
Into the
winter.
mic.
Okay, so if you heard that, because that's the reality of the situation. My background was in developing medical rehab hospitals. I developed 13 of those for spinal cord injuries and traumatic brain injuries. I'd hate to see any of our residents and their children have to use one of those because I know what that looks like. But most importantly, I completely get where the state's coming from in terms of this. We're in a housing crisis. I understand that's pushed down to Truckee now as well. But there is a law of unintended consequences. If we proceed forward with this, this isn't an unintended consequence. This isn't, we're all in this together, including all of you in the Planning Commission and the staff, who I appreciate so much. We love Truckee, we love the town council, everything about it. Maybe this is a lightning rod. Maybe Truckee's gonna have to stand up and say, I'm sorry, state, one size does not fit all. This simply doesn't work. I snowshoe across Brockway Summit all the time. During the winter, the berm there, I have to do it like this. Let's pretend this is the corner. I'm on my snowshoes. You cannot see. There is no visibility, none, because there's a 10-foot, 12-foot berm right there. That's going to create it's already a very dangerous situation. So, I think as a lot of people stated here, if we can take our time, try to work with the owner of this, for crying out loud, because we're not fabricating this. We live there. Pretend like each one of you, right now I'm looking at you, right now, pretend like you're in our shoes and you're living in Winter Creek. What would you do? Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to do this. My name is Harry Smith. I've been working with Chantel for a while, and I'd like to compliment staff. I spent 40 years in the commercial construction industry as an operations manager, and typically I was sitting next to the developer on the other side of the table. So it does bring me some perspective. I don't want to get into the minutia. I think that the residents have done a great job of articulating some real concerns. But I heard someone use the word, and it was similar to what I wanted to say, was the word granular. This has been a 100% administrative process to date. There's been no subjectivity. And I understand the guidelines that the state has put on what Chantel has to look at. And again, that's the most comprehensive staff plan staff study, or staff recommendation I've ever seen. But again, where is the reality check? Where is the granularity? And from what I've read, and I understand that under the guise of the state mandates and the CEQA, when things affect life safety, it trumps the density bonus requirements. You guys have a green light as the Planning Commission. I think there's been ample information portrayed today to put the brakes on this, and let's get granular and get a real snow plan and get real action plans. That's how it's a win-win for the developer and the community at large in Winter Creek. Thank you, and I believe I'm the last speaker. Thank you.
Okay, this is your last chance if there's any more public comment, otherwise we're going to close it.
Hello, everybody. I'm a general manager at Gravity House, right backing up to the development. Just found out about it today. No issue with that. We're busy. I'm sure it got sent to Colorado.
Your name?
I'm Stephen Moore. I just want to say I think we do need to pump the brakes here. I hear my neighbors loud and clear. I know that housing is important in North Lake Tahoe and Truckee. They're going to house employees. People need places to live, lift ops, housekeepers, people that'll work at my hotel. But hearing all the concerns, it seems like it's a little bit rushed. I think we need to take a step back and just reevaluate the safety concerns and see what we can do moving forward from there. But I'm all for housing. We need it. Just again, the concerns seem valid. I hear my neighbors loud and clear. I'm requesting we take a step back as well. And my heart's pounding. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to close public comment. Do you want to move on? Do you want to take 5 minutes? You want to keep going?
A straw poll?
Excuse me?
You want to do a straw poll?
Yes. You want to keep going, or do you want to take 5 minutes? Take a break?
Yeah,
Take a
5-minute
break?
break would be great.
Sure.
Thanks.
5-minute break?
A real 5-minute break.
A 9-minute break, 7
No, a
o'clock on
5-minute
that clock
break.
right there.
5.
I forgot I got that hammer. It's not common for people to give me a hammer. So I forget I have it. The handle with a mallet on it. All right. Thank you all for being patient. Where are we? Open, close. All right, we're up to deliberation. So, Dave, have at it.
Okay, well, I like your leadership style, Chair.
Appreciate that.
I have very serious safety concerns about this project. I also would like to talk about, other things that I would like to have seen the developer do. I would like to just maybe have a little bit of discussion about why couldn't two of these buildings, these larger multiplexes that are tucked to, I guess, the south and east side of this lot be three-story podium product? I think it is important. I understand that we have guidelines and rules and laws and all this stuff that Sacramento wants to shove down our throat. We have seen in other projects around town where we have, for one reason or another, approved less than adequate parking. And I know that there's great ideas about e-bikes and bike share and all these wonderful things about how we're going to stop driving cars in the future. But we're not there yet. And this will cause a significant parking boondoggle. And that's where I'd like to start. That's my opinion thus far.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you all to hold your applause. We can't have every single statement applause. So
We appreciate
we
your
appreciate
enthusiasm.
your enthusiasm. It's awesome, but
It's going to be midnight if we
Yeah.
don't hold the applause. So we
Thanks.
know you're excited.
all right. Okay. Do you have a comment on that, Carl? Not yet. Sammy?
Well, before I even get into a lot of my deliberation points, I have, I guess, two questions, probably for you, Martin, and then maybe for staff too. How much can we ask? Like, I know you've asked the developer for redesigns, and that has been a non-starter, and they are not required to. How much can we ask them to go back and change? Like, what are our limitations? What are they open to doing? Are they open to having that conversation about major redesign, knowing that we're not, that we have some major concerns here? And I don't know who best can answer.
It is staff's understanding that we are limited to public health and safety, contrary to law, to that. And we started these discussions, and this is, I'm taking this as like an analyst, right? We've got the density bonus law, we've got our development code. Our town attorney was involved at the very beginning in 2021 on this project. We've had meetings with council. I mean, it's gone through some iterations. So my understanding is that's where staff is limited. Of course, the planning commission, here we are and you guys are deliberating. So as far as just what's straight in the law and in our codes, that's what it would seem.
Can I go through some of the comments that I heard, answer those questions? I think that would be beneficial. And then I have some offerings potentially for some modifications that might help the situation. Is that fair enough? Okay. So look, we hear you, right? I wear an interesting hat. I look at a lot of different projects, and what we try to do in projects is we try to make projects better, right? And it's difficult, right? The town has very intricate codes, and we have to match the project with that. And then we also look for, when we get involved with projects, we try to make win-wins where we can make projects better, okay? So that being said, there's some things that I see that we could probably offer to make this project a little bit better, and I'm going to get to that. First, I want to talk about snow storage. Let's just start there, okay? Snow storage is a difficult thing in Truckee. We have some light years and it's not that bad, and then we have heavy years and it's horrendous. I get it. Town has a very specific and detailed code of how they look at it to try to not create chaos when it comes to snow storage, right? They, one thing that you don't see in the plan, and I'm just going to throw this out there so you know that we look at all this stuff. It's one thing for us to try to solve the math, if you will, and one of the commenters talked about that. We go through that and try to solve those issues with, minimum 10-foot dimensional snow storage areas and ramping, and where it's heavy landscaping, we don't put it. Realistically, in that plan, there's a lot more snow storage that can be had. It just doesn't necessarily meet. There's a lot of areas that might be 8 feet in dimension, not 10 feet, and so on. So there's a lot more snow storage than what we're taking credit for. However, the town has minimums, and we've exceeded the minimums, if you will, right? So we've met the town code, but it is a tight site. So I'm just going to say that. In terms of traffic and public safety, I can say we take it extremely seriously on all of our projects. And I know the town takes it very seriously in the way that they analyze level of service. One thing that is really difficult, and this goes for every project in Truckee, is if we looked at the worst case scenario of projects of when they analyze traffic counts, if you did a project near a school and you looked at 8 a.m. and if you looked at holidays and you looked at some of those peak periods, that Truckee being a resort town and a pass-through to Tahoe as well, literally no project would meet the requirements. So the town, since they've been a town, basically has been very diligent in the way that the town has been very diligent in the way that they analyze their traffic studies, in that they look at every project equally per their town model. So it's like an even playing field in the way they analyze it. Whether you agree with it or not, they're very consistent in the way they analyze it. So that's in terms of traffic. So in terms of public safety, we've got 2 ways in and out. Fire department, has basically said this meets their requirements in terms of that. Okay, whether you agree with it or not, that's what's said. In terms of level of service and the left turn movements out of Brockway Road, I agree with Scott's depiction of the map of what he showed on Brockway Road. The town did to considerable expense, did a lot of pedestrian crossing improvements along the whole Brockway Road corridor for those movements that we're talking about to the regional park. They knew that that was going to be one of their arterial roads, and they put money and improvements to that standard. So that all being said, I just want to convey, we get it, right? We look at these things. No, hold on, we get there. So one thing, I just want to start on maybe some of the lower hanging fruit of things that we might be able to offer. Chantel, I don't know if you have those, but following our last neighborhood meeting, one thing what was that, a 2-hour meeting? And I didn't talk too much on that. More of those meetings, especially before a hearing like that, is more to hear from you of what your concerns from. And trust me, I took a lot of notes, and I know what your concerns were, and I took those to heart. One of the things we worked with immediately with Kay is how do we add in a recreational amenity or something on site into our project. So I guess, Chantel, I don't know if you have those, but.
I don't have them available, but I think we could probably discuss their location.
Okay.
And this was something, I'll just jump in, that they were throwing back and forth, but it never got put into the plans for planning commission review. It was never fully vetted. So
Martin, what's your point here?
So my point is two points. So first, in terms of recreational amenities, I guess first, before I get into that, first, a project like this is about competing interests, right? You're always playing with, whether the height of the building. Right out of the gate, you guys suggested, hey, maybe 3-story might be a better way to loosen up the site, okay? So to another person, they may look at a 3-story building next to that and they say, absolutely not, I don't want a 3-story. So there's competing interests of how you make a project better, okay? So that being said, we can put in a couple of recreational amenities on the site, because we did hear that at the at the community meeting that they said, look, you're not providing anything on site. You can't expect everybody to go over to the regional park. So we put a hard effort in on creating an outdoor gathering space. We also created kind of an abbreviated bocce ball thing in the northern area where we kind of have the unused area up in there. So we had a bocce ball court that was kind of laid down there, an abbreviated one. And then to the southwest, to the west of Building 10, we were going to do kind of an outdoor gathering area. It could be a barbecue pit, it could be an outdoor table, gathering space. But we were trying to say, hey, what do we have on the site that we can offer some improvements to the site? So again, low-hanging fruit, but that's one of the things that we wanted to offer. Okay? If I'm hearing kind of right out of the gate from two of the commissioners at least, if the thought is on the project that 3-story units for some of the units has a lot of merit, I want to make a suggestion. Now I do want to preface that, and a lot of you are not, obviously, this is super important to you, and you get noticing and you find out about this project and you're saying, hey, I just heard about this project, slow it down, stop it. On the flip side, just being fair, I've been on this thing about a year. The owner has been at this with the town for, when was the application submitted? It's been 3.5 years, 4 years?
Yeah, it was submitted August of 2021, I believe.
So I know. I just want to give context. There's point of views and there's context.
Folks,
Okay.
listen, sorry, Chair, for interrupting.
Go for
But
it.
you guys got to pipe down, all right?
Yeah.
We got a lot of stuff to grind through tonight. We heard you, and we hear you loud and clear. So just give us a little bit of respect so we can get through it, okay?
And on that, Martin, I need
Yeah.
you to get to the point.
Okay, so I'm getting to the punchline, right?
Please.
Okay. So during our break, I called the developer, the owner, Reza, and I talked through some suggestions based on what I was hearing and things that I think we could make the project better for all involved. He's not going to go back and say, I'm cutting it down to 20 units. That's not in the cards. But if we essentially keep, this is what I'm suggesting, and I think maybe two of the commissioners were going towards this at the beginning. What I'm suggesting is possibly buildings 1 and 2 in the southeast corner go to 3 stories, and you allow, if we're allowed up to 35, is it still in the code, allowing it up to a 5-foot additional deviation so we can go to 40?
I believe it's still in that version of the code, but we'd have to. With the
Well,
zoning
regardless,
it's an older,
regardless, we can ask for that as a concession as part of the state bump, because we're not limited to concessions we can ask for, right? So if we went to 3 stories on building 1 and 2, and you allowed us up to a 5-foot above the 35-foot threshold, we might be able to flatten the roof a little bit. Kay's got to analyze it, but we could look at that, okay? It's probably least impactful to the Winter Creek to the west if we increase the height of those 2. Here's the opportunity of what it does to the site, okay? So one of the things that the site generally meets most of the town requirements except for site coverage is one, and more parking would be an added bonus that I know the neighborhood would appreciate. So if we go to 3-story on building 1 and 2, can I just point to the map?
Yeah, point to 1 and 2.
Building 1 and 2. If these 2 went to 3 stories, okay, back to the we could eliminate building 8. Building 8, right here. What I'm suggesting, that adds more landscaping, more open space, but it does 2 things what I would want to do with that revision. I consider it kind of a minor revision. We'd keep the road layout the same. Building 1 and 2 would generally stay where they're at. But since there's all that extra room now in front, I would take building 3 and 4, which is directly above 1 and 2, and I'd move those over into the area of building 8 that we're eliminating. That gains 2 things. So I'll point to it, and then I'll come back and tell you what if these 2 buildings go here, that change adds more open space, more landscaping, And it gives the opportunity, by my quick math of looking at the scale, I could add 5 more parking stalls as well. So what I'm suggesting, and I was essentially trying to talk the client into this, saying, hey, I think we can make some substantive improvements from what I'm hearing. We could add 5 parking stalls, add landscaping, add open space, and make the project essentially better by going those 2 buildings 3-story. It just loosens it up a little bit. What I would request if we offer to do all these things is I would like to work with staff to finalize those. Hopefully that would be something that you would consider with approval. We don't want to ram it through based on state mandates and requirements. He wasn't pushing the limits on that. There was more density on. I think Chantel kind of illustrated that. From state mandates and what the state allows you to do, it was a modest request for some of these increases. But I get it. You're in an existing nice neighborhood and you want to retain that. I'm trying to offer these things to try to make the project better. So that's my pitch. Wholehearted design enhancement, if you will, to make it better. But I want to see what the Planning Commission thinks about that. Before coming into this, I didn't think 3-story was something you'd want to see. But I think if we did that with just buildings 1 and 2, it would keep the integrity of the plan and it just frees it up. So with that.
Thank you, Martin. Sammy, did that answer your question?
It's a good start. Thank you, Martin, for that.
All right.
But I feel like that certainly gives us something to talk about.
Well,
Chair, maybe if you just want me to jump in here for
Please.
a second, because it's not very often that we have a developer propose some modifications at the dais in response to a question that a commissioner has asked. So you can consider the project that's in front of you today. You can also continue review of this to a date and time certain or date and time uncertain to allow the applicant to pursue these options that have been raised during this meeting. So it's sort of, you have 2 choices. So you might want to talk about that first before you.
or is there a third choice where we okay it with his suggestions and we leave it up to the zoning administrator?
No. I think given the complexity of the issues that have been raised,
Okay.
this is definitely a planning commission level review. And just for the audience, so as the director, I also act as the zoning administrator. But those meetings are often at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and are not as conducive for people to attend. And they're at much smaller scale of issues.
If we continue, is that reopen public comment?
Yes, it would. If we do date and time certain, it'll be limited to sort of the new issues that come up, right? That are, so the new project design and sort of the associated topics with that.
So
And-
public comment would be limited to what's changed from today.
Essentially, yes.
And could we make recommendations or provide guidance if we were continuing? We could continue, if we said we'd like to continue.
Yes.
If that were the case, we could provide.
Yeah, any feedback that you want to provide, assuming that the applicant team is willing to take a continuance, would be helpful for them in going back and looking at their site design work that they would be doing and the modifications they would bring back to the commission.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to comment on some of the public comment, I think, just to get it off of my shoulders. So it's not fast-tracked. It's been in staff for 3 years. However, the state of California has dictated that these projects are supposed to be fast-tracked. So we're in a very hard position up here. And staff. The development code says A, and the state of California says B. So what do? If we say no to the state, then we get sued. So now the town is dealing with a lawsuit from the state, which is, excuse me? There might be a lawsuit either way. However, I'm going to leave that alone. What else did I have?
Can I add to one comment that you
Please.
just made there, Mitch? I just want to clarify. You said the state makes us fast track these projects. And just for clarification, this is a density bonus that the developer is using, a state law to increase density.
Right.
And so it's not that any housing project or multifamily housing project, it's density bonus.
Right. Right. And fortunately or unfortunately, we're still in America. It's still a capitalist society. So somebody's going to want to make a profit by building. So the state takes that into consideration when they say we need to fast track this and make it more available to every citizen of the state of California. What else did I have?
And I'll add to that too that there were some folks that got up and mentioned their concerns about the artist lofts and people coming up from Sacramento and so forth. Our hands are tied due to fair housing laws. We can't say who can rent these places and who can buy places. It's discrimination.
The projects are allowed to have deed restrictions, though.
They have to have deed restrictions.
And some are for workforce housing. Those are allowed.
I understand that, but my point is that just trying to help everybody understand that we can't say nobody coming up from Sacramento can rent these places. Like
we can't do that. However,
I think it would be very inappropriate for us to try to exclude anybody from coming anywhere.
That's correct. That's the point. However, I think the artist lofts, since it took state and federal grants, were put on lists in other areas. We don't have any housing here in Sacramento, but they have some up in Truckee. And I don't believe this would fall into that category. Is that correct?
Just since you asked the question, so the artist lofts, when they were doing their financing package, did get tax credits. So it has certain affordability requirements as part of that. But they also proposed the vouchers for that, and they're specific to that project. And so what happens with those vouchers is they go to a housing authority. In this case, it's the one that's out of Yuba. Basically, are assigned the number of those units to be available. And so when someone goes on a housing list and they say, I would like a unit, if an artist lofts unit comes up, then they'll be asked, would you like to move to Truckee and have this unit? So it's something that particular housing developer wanted as part of their financing package and the ability to have those units available for rent. This is not the same scenario with this project, that they're not proposing those project-specific vouchers. But again, to clarify, any property owner can take just vouchers on their own that are, really just a rent subsidy. So
they just don't end up on the list.
Yeah.
Is really where the difference is. So I'm just hoping you all understand that it's not going to be the same clientele in that particular case. I can't have the audience saying anything. All right. Do we want to discuss those changes? Do we want to discuss snow storage? Do we want to discuss health and safety issues?
I'll jump off on the health and safety issues.
Please.
I don't think that this site can support that type of density. I agree with the public comment about the safety issues. I think that the people are right, that there's going to be gridlock on Brockway Road, and then people are going to use the Winter Creek Road as the main egress to Palisades, and it's just already so tight in there. I just don't think I don't think I can get over that. That's where I'm at.
The intersection does create a great deal of concern for me. Just don't like to see kids crossing the street, or in a position of potential danger. We have 3 points that we were asked to discuss. These all affect whether or not we could approve this. Would the incentive, concession, or waiver reduction requested cause a public health or safety problem, an environmental problem, harm, problem? Would it cause a health and safety problem? It's possible that we may believe that it does. That's one. There's 2 others. Do the concessions they ask for result in a cost reduction? I'm not a builder. Is it cheaper to build 1 3-story building or 2 2-story buildings?
Commissioner
So does it-
Kavanaugh, just to direct this, the incentive concession is the private exterior space. That's the one that's the financially.
That's the assigned one?
Yeah, so the waivers and reduction of standards, that is, does application of the development standard have the effect of physically precluding the construction of the proposed residential project at the density? So here, I can switch to that if you'd like to discuss that
And
one.
does it have to, so it's construction of the proposed project, the proposed project as a 40-unit project, or the proposed project exactly as it's been proposed to us today?
It says that the density is permitted, so I would assume up to the 45 units that would be permitted through density bonus law.
But not necessarily this exact project in its particulars as presented to us.
I think as the proposed project as presented. That's my read on it. The construction of the proposed residential project.
Does that help?
Yes, I need to think about it.
Sammy?
I mean, I think I have some additional questions that I think the developer will have to go back and do some additional analysis. If they were to move ahead with those 2 3-story buildings rather than, and removing building 8, would they still need the waiver or reduction in open space or site coverage? And if they don't, then they can possibly put more recreational amenities on site, which might then reduce the need to cross the street to utilize the park for all, recreational activity, communal space. That could be on site, which would reduce the need to cross the street. I'm not saying it would eliminate it, but it would reduce the need. I mean, it's a great amenity to have across the street. But they may not need that waiver, so we might be able to cross it off. But I don't know the numbers, so I don't know the square footages involved with that, and then if it is consistent or not with the development standards. But that's one thing that I would like to know moving forward. I still think there's traffic issues, but again, unfortunately, in the society we live in, people drive their cars, and we can't. I would love to have people stop driving their cars, but that's not my choice. So I think that's something that has been analyzed. We see it. We may or may not like the results of that study, but they are the results of the study. I don't know how else to combat that. But I think increasing parking on site would also help maybe alleviate some of the concerns. Again, that brings us to 77 parking spaces, which is still, I think 85 was the number of spaces that would be ideal and fully in accordance with the development code. But I think we're getting there. I don't want to say, I think housing is super important here. I think a diversity of housing types is super important to have in a community. Not only does it, create diversity within the community, helps create resilience, help create economic vitality. It's just important to have. So I don't want to preclude people who can't afford to buy in Winter Creek from enjoying the same space. I don't think that's fair. So I just want to see how we can move this along in a way that addresses the major concerns, but also is successful. So that's kind of where I'm at, laying it all out there.
I concur with that assessment. I think that one of the reasons that additional open space would be desirable is because it would reduce the amount of need to cross the street. In some of the comments, it mentioned that the play area for Winter Creek was right next to the proposed development. I was out there yesterday and I didn't see a play area. So what I think might actually happen is that the people from Winter Creek might end up using a new play area in Silver Creek Estates if it were there. They might have something to say about that, I don't know. But a more open plan with some recreational area would be definite improvement.
I mean, it'd be great if also some of that more open area could be used for additional on-site snow storage calcs too. So I think it just opens up some possibilities that we need more information about. What are the new areas that we're looking at and what do those numbers actually look like? So I just, I think it's a great step forward, but I don't know if we have all the information we need to fully make a decision.
I'd like more information. I'd like to see
So
a
Martin,
redesign.
if we're going to go down that path, then we're going to need to postpone to a time and date uncertain, I think, depending on the set of plans that comes out of you guys. So is that something in your bailiwick?
One question, I mean, you say time not certain. That's the painful part. Sometimes these type of what we think are relatively, we could turn it around, a couple weeks, get the plans updated, submit, and we're seeing you guys before Christmas. That's the fear.
And the fear on our side is, let's say I say date certain next month and you're not ready.
Yeah, and we're going to go really fast to get this back in. So I guess if there's some surety that we could get back before you with the revision soon, is there any way I could request a 5-minute recess just to concur with my client? He feels he's on solid ground with based on what the state is saying and the town code. He thought he struck that balance, but what I pitched you with this revision, I think that could be a win-win for all involved. So if I had 5 minutes, I could see if he'll agree to a continuance. Is that fair?
What's the next available spot?
We are just chatting. So June would be next to impossible because we notice 14 days out. So
July?
and I have to admit, whatever the change in scope of the project, we would most likely need to reroute it. We need to have approvals from just our outside agencies. So that's 2 weeks. I mean, I think August would be a for sure. I mean, I think we could do date and time. If you guys could turn around the plans, I think August sounds like a very doable time frame for both review, discussions, and you guys changing the plans.
If routing comes back, potentially July, but August, if not? Is that?
Yeah, I would think August would be, so we can do date and time certain. We can keep the public comment limited if you were comfortable on just saying
August 20th.
August.
August 20th
put you on the
specifically.
agenda.
If we can make it, a certain, I like that idea because it is housing.
So do you want your 5 minutes to talk to your developer?
Yeah, and just one last question, if I could,
Yes.
to Commissioner Taylor. I don't think that reduction of that, it's a larger building that we'd be eliminating, but we are adding some parking, so that kind of cancels out some of the coverage. So it definitely gets a lot better, but I don't think we would be exactly there, but I think it would be significant, is to your, is there any other feedback from the commission? And I know you're not making a decision tonight, but did what I present as an optional change, does that have merit? I mean, I guess I want to know if I'm going in the right direction.
Well, we can't say whether or not we would approve it, of course.
No, I
but
want to know if it's in the right direction,
I appreciated the suggestions and think that, personally, I thought that was in the right direction.
More spots and more open space, I'm sure, is the right direction.
Thank you. If you'll give me 5 minutes, I'll call the client right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
What else do we want to discuss while we're waiting? Any direction from staff? Give me a hand here.
Yeah, I mean, I think whatever other list of issues that you might have had on your list that you want to bring to Martin's attention would be helpful. Obviously, if he's out for 5 minutes, you might want to wait until he comes back. But you touched on some of the issues that were raised with public comment, such as public safety. I'm not sure you talked totally about traffic. If you had any additional questions for Scott about the
What would it take to put a light in?
For there to be enough traffic to reach the level of service thresholds to warrant the traffic signal. So the town engineer bases his decision on the California Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is the state standard for when you implement different intersection improvements. Again, when we reach that level of service F with the 4 vehicle hours of delay, which again we're nowhere close to, then we start looking at intersection improvements. It would say, hey, we need some kind of intersection improvement to improve the level of service. General plan policy is that we don't install new traffic signals, so that's likely off the table. It would be likely a roundabout if we were at level of service F.
Okay, so regardless of if we're at level of service F, do we as the commission have any leverage to say put in a roundabout?
No.
All right.
If it's not a roundabout, what about additional traffic calming or something to?
Sure. So we can pull back up the slide that I put together. It pretty much is maxed out on a intersection improvement project as you're going to get.
Except for the blinky light.
Except for, sure, an
Or even a
recommendation
painted
for-
crosswalk.
But the painted crosswalk and the, the blinky light.
Rapid flashing
Thank
beacons.
you.
Yep.
That doesn't solve the people trying to come out to Brockway Road and trying to make a left turn. Crossing eastbound traffic to get into the westbound lane. And I think that's where this is going to be the major challenge for this intersection. So
From
what
what
I'm hearing
from
from
what
engineering
perspective?
is that there's nothing that we can do.
What concern do you have about taking a left out of Winter Creek? That I can provide context for.
I think that there is more traffic than the traffic study is showing us, and that cars do go fast, and the berm does build up, and trying to eke your way out there, I think cars are going to be queued up there. I think that's going to be a problem. Yeah, and so I'm just trying to see what other choices we have to try to mitigate that problem,
So a couple
whether or not
things.
the traffic study says that the problem is there or not.
Okay. So Martin kind of went into this a little bit before, but we don't base our traffic studies off of wintertime, gridlocked, low sight distance.
I understand that, Scott. Yeah, I'm just trying to ask you what other opportunities there are.
Sure. So if
Yeah.
we're having issues with sight distance based on snowbanks, on a public roadway like Brockway Road, you can always put in a service request to Public Works and see if they can come knock it down to improve sight distance. They can run the blower by to improve.
Christian, you need to stop. We're going to have to ask you to leave.
We can, we bring the blower out. We typically do that on major arterials like Brockway. So, but if we were getting requests by then, we can take into consideration those, come out and do our own analysis of sight distance, see if we're experiencing the same issues. So there's some opportunities there in the wintertime that could help improve sight distance. Gridlock conditions. That's not the intent of engineering design in the town based on council direction to size everything for even remotely close to gridlock conditions. These are the 10th highest summer PM peak hour, which is a pretty busy summer day, but it's not gridlock day. And that's all at council's direction. So I don't know if that helps provide a
Yeah, it
little
helps.
context.
Yep, thank you.
What else? Did you have any other list? Do you have any list of any questions?
No, I think I've made my concerns pretty clear at this point.
Coral, you said you had to give something some thought. Did you do that?
Oh, it was the parking, and with the offer of 5 more spaces, I think that's a applicant concession or offering that improves the situation, that would improve the situation. So those, there's a parking plan required in the conditions right now, or assigned parking included in the conditions right now. And if the 5 spaces that would just provide a little extra, there was a concern about where would visitors park, where would vendors park, or where's the cable guy park? Maybe those 5 spaces offer visitor parking. That might help. I just, in response to that, I think the 5 spaces would help. I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if that's too much, given that it would take away from snow storage, or it wouldn't contribute to snow storage.
It would add to the need for
Would
more
add-
snow
so
storage.
I can't.
And they would
do
have to
that.
figure that out.
And present it to us.
Sammy, did you have any other questions, concerns, topics for discussion?
No, I mean, I think we don't have any full answers on anything, so I think we need to hear what's going to be said.
That's you, Martin.
I spoke with the owner. I explained, and he's watching tonight, and we talked about some of the issues. And we would like to revise the plan, kind of as suggested, and we'd like to come back before this. He's just stressing that the timing is really important, that if he does this step and we operate quickly, that if it has to be routed again, as quickly as that can get routed, and just the first available planning commission, We don't want to be wishing people happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas. We'd like to be back, but we would revise the plan. I think we can make some substantive improvements that are beneficial to the neighborhood. The spirit of trying to make a good, we all agree we need housing and we want to make the project better. And if we have that opportunity, it takes a little bit of time, then so be it. Those are his sentiments. So I guess we'd be requesting a continuance if we can come back before you and see the new revised plan.
I'd like to make a motion. Can you pull up the application number, please? Yep.
Watch out for the speed bumps.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue the Silver Creek Estates application 2021-060 DP item to the August 20th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
Second.
Chair Claren,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gove,
Yes.
Commissioner Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you.
There you have it.
Okay, yeah, now you can applaud.
Thank you for showing up.
I know exactly what I was about to say.
And then the lower ones and those are the ones, that's why I like this idea, is those lower ones, it's tight. And those can spin out.
All right, can we take our conversations outside, please? Where the hell is this one? Okay, am I on? So the planner is Lucas. He is sick, so he's on Zoom. So we're up to item 7.2 on the agenda for tonight. Our staff presentation is Luke Cannell. As I just mentioned, Luke is sick and coming in on a Zoom from his home. So Luke, whenever you're ready.
All right, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, great. Thank you for accommodating me presenting remotely tonight. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Lucas Cannell. I'm the assistant planner here at the town, and I'm here to present the 10198 Thomas Drive SB9 appeal for your review. The appeal hearing format will be a staff presentation. The appellant will have 15 minutes to have their own presentation if they choose. Commission will then have questions for staff and appellant. We'll have time for public comment, and then an appellant rebuttal, which can be 5 minutes. The appellants may not present new evidence or testimony at the appeal hearing unless the appellant can demonstrate that new information was either not previously available to the party, or the party could not have participated in the review process because they could not have known about the review process. Before we go into the project, first I'd like to give a little background on the SB9 legislation that allows for this project. The legislation was adopted in September 26 of 2021, and state adopted SB9 legislation which allowed for the subdivision of single-family zone parcels, as well as up to 4 units through a combination of primary residences, SB9 units, ADU units, and JADUs. This legislation allowed for jurisdictions to apply objective design standards for SB9 units through a ministerial approval process. This project was applied for in November 1st of 2023. It was deemed complete and routed for review. After review, an inconsistency letter was issued to the applicant to let them know of inconsistencies with the project couldn't be approved. The applicant requested denial of the project instead of redesigning it, and then an appeal was submitted. This project is located within the Armstrong Tract subdivision on a single-family residential parcel. Adjacent properties have been approved with single-family residences on steep, narrow lots, as you can see here. These are the 2 adjacent properties on either side of the vacant lot. The application proposes a new 5,949 square foot building that is 45.5 feet in height. It'll include 1,093 square feet of common area and a 4-car garage. Additionally, the building would include a 798 square foot SB9 unit, a 796 square foot SB9 unit, a 958 square foot accessory dwelling unit, a 495 square foot junior accessory dwelling unit, 448 square feet of storage area, a 278 square foot mechanical room, 113 square foot entryway, and 1,487 square feet of decks and porches. The town's SB9 ordinance allows for SB9 units to be up to 800 square feet each, and the additional proposed space will need to be attributed to these units, pushing them over their allowable size thresholds. Additionally, SB9 units may not exceed 16 feet in height, making the structure over the allowable height for an SB9 project, among other issues as identified in the inconsistency letter. The appellant requested to appeal 3 items from the denial of their project. The first is which is the appeal of the 16-foot maximum height standard required for SB9 units. The 16-foot height requirement for SB9 units was adopted by Town Council as part of the town's ordinance for regulating SB9 urban lot splits and 2-unit developments. SB9 legislation allows for local jurisdictions to adopt objective zoning standards, objective design standards, and objective subdivision standards, unless they would have the effect of physically precluding the construction of up to 2 units, or physically precluding either of the 2 units from being at least 800 square feet in floor area. The height requirement cannot be modified through an appeal and would require another vote by Town Council to amend the town's SB9 ordinance. The next is that the appellant would like the project to be approved if, says that the project could be approved if it was reviewed as a single-family residence. A single-family residence would be reviewed under a completely different development standard than this project. And if the project was proposed as a single-family residence, it still would not meet required setbacks, height, site coverage, or the height of the proposed retaining walls. The third item is that the appellant would like a re-review of the project using single-family development standards. This project would not be eligible to be reviewed under the single-family residential development standards, as it's not a single-family residence, but rather a 2-unit project. As allowed by SB 9 legislation, the town has adopted SB 9 specific development standards to allow for up to 4 residential units on a single parcel. There are several notable differences between state's SB 9 development standards and the town's development standards for single-family residences. This includes substantially reduced side setbacks, rear yard setbacks, and lot standards under SB 9. Any changes to the existing ordinance would have to be made through an ordinance amendment approved by town council. Staff asked the Planning Commission determine the Community Development Director's determination exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines pursuant to section 15300.1, which is relation to ministerial projects, uphold the decision of the Community Development Director in denying the 10198 Thomas Drive SB 9 2-unit development applications, and deny the appeal requesting reconsideration of height requirements and re-review of the project based on development standards applicable to single-family residences, on the basis that Senate Bill 9 legislation allows for local agencies to oppose objective design standards, and by definition, the proposal has failed to satisfy these objective standards. Thank you.
Does the applicant have a presentation? So as a reminder, Christian, you got 15 minutes. It's going to be timed by Kaylee.
Okay, understood. I'd like to just start this off with Lucas. Can you hear me, or Mr. Kennel?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you please define how you objectively obtained a 16-foot height limit for SB 9?
I was not part of the process for objectively determining the height of SB 9 units. That is something that was crafted by town staff and adopted by town council.
I just want to bring that point up because you can't say something's objective just because you pick a number, right? Objective would have to be like scientific studies of why you have to do that. Maybe with view or snow loads or whatever. I was just checking on that before I jump into this.
Can I clarify what the legislation says? Legislation says that a local agency can adopt objective standards. It doesn't say the standards have to be arrived at objectively. The standards themselves simply have to be objective.
So you could just arrive at saying that all SB 9 projects have to be 6 inches off the ground.
Well, if that standard met the requirements of the law, yes. If it didn't physically preclude construction, I suppose that would be possible. Of course, that's not what the standard is.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted everyone to hear that you would be okay with a 6-inch height limit. All right, and I'll start my my talk here. I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Christian Bratt. I was born in Tahoe Forest. I created the Truckee hat, and I know that people need places to live. Okay? For some reason, this town is trying to restrict my ability to give people places to live. If you're going to live next to a fourplex, and actually if you really look into SB 9, it's only every other lot. And that's only if the person who owns the lot decides to do that. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna be so sad that I'm gonna live next to like 4 little families growing up. Okay, that's my personal spiel. But we jump into the height restrictions. We already did that. SB 9 mandates the relaxation of local standards if they prevent the construction of at least 2 units of 800 square feet each. So there's no way that we could build those 2 units on that downhill lot without exceeding that. It would literally be impossible. there's a huge disparity because if this were to be a single family residence, they would classify the height limit to be 35 feet. Yet, because it's SB9, they said, all right, it is 16 feet. And just to let you guys know, before I even started designing this project, I went into the town of Truckee and I said, look, I'm going to try to do an SB9 4-unit project. I was like, you give me the criteria and I will design it. They said, word for word, and I can obtain the documents where she wrote on it. She said 4-foot site limits, or 4-foot setbacks and 35-foot height limit. Those were her only criteria. I restricted that even more and created this, and I've literally been trying to get this through for a year, and SB9 requires that it should be reviewed within a month. Mr. Kennel was incorrect in that I submitted this before he had his code changes, and I have evidence of that. They changed their laws, and some of his staff members actually confirmed this just to oppose this project. I don't understand why this project is such a big deal. However, if I wanted to build a 10,000 square foot single family with a floating edge pool, it would be fine. If I may quote Cat Stevens, where are the children supposed to play? I think that's it. Any rebuttals?
Oh, yeah.
Let's hear it.
So next will be clarifying questions for applicant or the staff. Thank you. Next is clarifying questions for applicant or staff. Coral, what do you got for us?
For the applicant, why didn't you try a redesign?
I did. There was a...
Mike?
Yeah, could you please? Yeah, they need to record your comments. Thanks.
I can prove this over email, and it actually was the second rendition based on what the town of Truckee told me.
Does the design include space within the 4-foot setback?
Correct. It's actually almost designed for a regular family home. And if I may, as a civil engineer specializing in structural engineering, the reason that they have this low height limit is for when it gets into the 4-foot setback and they're worried about snow unloading. However, there's only one portion of this house that is unloading, and it is unloading parallel to the side setback, and there is literally no chance of any life safety issue here. They seem to be clearly trying to impede my project, the project.
Coral, any other questions?
So you did say yes, part of it is within the 4-foot setback.
If you would like, I can remove that tonight.
I guess my question would be, why didn't you do that before?
I already, sorry to just explain, but I already went to the town of Truckee and they said it was a 4-foot setback limit. I realized they made somewhat of a mistake, or maybe they would, and I would end up in this position. And so I only did one small chunk that protrudes not even within 6 to 8 feet, I think.
Nothing right now.
Sammy?
Sure, I just have a process question, I guess. So once you received the letter stating what was inconsistent with the building code, you decided not to go back and redesign to address those issues. You decided that you were going to move forward with it as is, which you knew wasn't within the town's standards.
I don't think you're correct to a certain degree. I think what you're referring to is when they sent me a somewhat of a review letter, and they said, Christian, you did not request to use the new height limit standard when my project was submitted before the height limit standard was implemented, and I believe that was unjust, and I did not want to reply to that.
Okay, but it seems like there are some other inconsistencies that you also didn't want to address.
Can you elaborate, please?
I mean, even in the staff report that we were provided, it just says there are several standards that were not being met by the design. And so my question to you is, you decided not to redesign it based on the current understanding of the standards.
Could you please give me a specific example? I'm an engineer, I like to see it.
Sure. For example, and I don't know, Lucas, if you want to jump in with any more specificity here than what I have just in front of me. But for example, the standard is decks may encroach 6 feet into rear setbacks, but must remain 14 feet from rear property lines. The decks in your proposed design are 10 feet from the property line.
That is incorrect. I submitted a new set with a response to every correction that Mr. Kennel had, and I redesigned the back deck to include that requirement.
I would just like to clarify. We asked Mr. Bratt if he would like to redesign the project, and he stated that he would prefer a denial. So we did issue a denial, which had an appeal date, and he appealed within the appeal date. But since then, he has submitted a revised plan set. And of the things that he did remedy, one of them was cutting the deck off at the proper setback. But
Thank you, Mr.
revision
Kennel.
is not part of this appeal.
Thank you.
All right. So if I may, do you have another example of where I violated some sort of ethical concern?
I mean, I guess this is maybe a process question for staff. If we're moving ahead with the denial of this, which he's appealed, but that he's also resubmitted plans for a different application, like what is I'm just confused by the process. If this application was denied and then is being appealed, will this new plan set that has been revised be under the same application, or is it starting fresh, I guess is my question.
I mean, we can do both, really. You can make a decision tonight on his initial appeal request.
I'm pretty sure Sam rested my point. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
I'm pretty sure Sam rested my point without knowing it.
You mean Commissioner
Sammy,
Taylor?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a process question, just because I'm confused by if, what the actions we take tonight will mean for the future of your project, because you seem like you're still working on it, so we don't want to preclude you from continuing to work on it. But it seems like there's different, I just don't know what the, I guess, logistics are.
Sure. So I'll answer your question, because I'm assuming you didn't get it. You still have a question?
Yes,
okay.
please.
I mean, we can run both of these in parallel. We can consider the appeal from the applicant's initial project design, which we don't believe complies with the development standards for an SB9 project. He still has an open SB9 application, and if he wishes to proceed with a new revised design, we can review that under the prior application and determine if that option complies with the standards. And if it doesn't, then we have options in front of us as well, and as does the applicant.
So we can deny and continue?
That was my
Sort of,
question.
like,
If we deny tonight,
If I may interject.
hold on a second, Christian.
I asked a question,
Yeah.
sorry.
If the Carl's question was mine also. So if we deny it tonight, he can still move on with corrections?
He can submit a revised application and we will review it in
Okay.
accordance with our standards. But what's before you tonight is the initial application that he requested to be appealed.
Right, got it.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I add a point?
Questions?
Can I add a
Hold on a
point, please?
second. You got anything, Dave? What?
Yeah, so I reviewed all of the tapes of these meetings with SB9, and I was unable to find you guys speaking of a 16-foot limit, and I asked Lucas for it, and I was unable to find it.
I think the 16-foot has specifically to do with an ADU, is that correct?
The 16-foot relates to 2-unit projects under the SB9 ordinance, and it was adopted back in December of 2021.
On an SFR.
Nice.
Well, SB9 doesn't have SFRs per se. The lingo is a little bit different. You've got primary units, and then you have an ADU and or a JAD.
I meant on a single-family residence zoned piece of property, as opposed to what we just looked at Silver Creek that doesn't have a 16-foot limit.
Correct. Thank you.
I'm not sure I understand.
Why would his SB9 project have a 16-foot limit, but the one on Silver Creek didn't?
It's different zone districts.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a
what it is.
multifamily zone district. It's different.
So you
I'd
want
also
a
like to
single
clarify,
family?
Chair Claren, if you don't mind. I believe also what you're asking is different types of structures have different height requirements. Whereas an ADU does have a 16 to 18 foot height limit, depending on where it's placed on the lot. SB9 units also have a 16-foot maximum height standard.
If they're placed on a single family resident zoned lot.
If I may, would you guys implementing a 16-foot height limit not impede the directives of what SB9 is trying to achieve?
I don't think that's up for conversation right now. Because the rule is 16 foot, so if you don't like the rule, then it needs to be changed. But
I have very nicely asked you guys to change that for almost a year, and you will not. And I don't know where this rule came from, but I do know that the fair housing law does not allow this.
Okay. We're going to go with what's written in laws, Christian. That's what we have to do here. It's up to the council to change that law, and I don't know if you've gone to them or not, and it's kind of immaterial for us at this juncture.
I'm sorry, I thought I was speaking to the council, am I not?
You're speaking to the planning commission.
So there's another step?
There's a higher step than us.
Okay, well,
That's the town council.
If we could please do that in due time, that'd be great.
Okay, you'll need staff to explain that process to you, but that's not us right now.
So just let me jump in here.
Thank you,
If
Andy.
the planning commission denies the appeal, you can appeal that denial to the town council. The town council is the 5 directly elected people from the community who are the highest authority in the town government. That's the last step within the town. The planning commissioners are appointed, and their job is to oversee land use and development applications, but their decisions can be appealed up to the council. So the planning commission doesn't have the authority to change the rules. The town council doesn't have the authority to change the rules in reviewing an appeal. They have the authority to change the rules kind of broadly. They're the ones who set the rules, they're the ones who can change the rules, but they can't change the rules in connection with an appeal.
Mr. Morris, if I may interject.
By all means.
So what is the purpose of this appeal? Because appeal means that something's going to get resolved, correct?
Well, the town's process allows you to have multiple appeals if you want them. This is the first step. If you get an answer that you like here, great, maybe you don't go up. If you don't get an answer you like here, the town's process allows you another shot, another appeal to the town council, the highest authority that we have within the town of Truckee. The point is to give applicants multiple chances to have an appeal if they want them.
Mr. Morris, can I just ask you one question? Did you not return my phone call?
I don't recall ever getting a phone call from you, to tell you the truth.
All right, and
All
now,
right, thank you.
Christian, I'm going to cut this off. So
where are we at this point?
Now I'm going to open up for public comment is the next part.
All right.
So with that, public comment, 3 minutes per person, please state your name.
My name's Robin Lavery. I live at 10186 Thomas Drive, directly next door to the project. We do have concerns about a 5,900 square foot 4-unit SB9 housing project on the cheapest and smallest lot in Truckee at 0.17 acres. We would like to know who Harlequin Homes are. We would like to know, hold your tongue. We would like to actually know who is financing this 4-unit SB9 housing. Who's going to be the full-time resident? Parking is an issue. Very convenient revenue stream for kids that would like to live in Truckee again. There's been no mention of affordable housing in these units. And now, being in close proximity to the developer, I'm wondering about his integrity and ethics, because I believe that you are under the influence of alcohol. I think you're drunk, sir, and I think you need to get a grip on yourself. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry that we're wasting it.
Any other public comment?
My name's Dave Sheets. I'm Robin's husband. I live at 10186 Thomas Drive, which is right next door to 10198. Just to put it in perspective, 0.17 acre lot is 7,405 square feet. 4,023 square foot coverage exceeds the 50% mandate for SB9. That was one of the other points that was brought up that you seem to have forgotten. In the attachment for the SB9 appeal docs from Appeal for Height Restriction, this is from March 1st, 2024, Harlequin Designs, Christian Bratt, PE. We believe the appeal contradicts the principle that SB9 units should not face more stringent regulations than the single-family homes within the town of Truckee. The word principle, a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation or belief or behavior for a chain of reasoning. I think that you're questioning these people's principles, and I think that's abhorrent. I can't believe that you're doing this. These people are working for all of us, and you're questioning them, their principles. You're asking the town of Truckee to bend the rules just for you in this project. The rules were presented to you. You chose not to follow the rules. You're asking, you'll get your chance. You had your chance and you'll get another chance. Individual property owner. This is from, let's see, this is from the stuff that was submitted for the town of Truckee. By the way, I'd never heard of SB9 until a week ago. Individual property owner means a natural person holding fee title individually or jointly in the person's own name or beneficiary or trust that holds fee title. Individual property owner does not include any corporation or corporate person of any kind, partnership, LP, limited partnership, limited liability corporation, C Corp, S Corp, etc., except for a community land trust. I suspect there's corporate money behind this project. I don't think you got $1 million laying around to do this project. And I think that as far as the town of Truckee is concerned, this is a Trojan horse to see what can be pulled off and then what can happen in other places. Unfortunately, we don't have a homeowners association in the Armstrong Tract or we'd be able to stop it. But I think you want to try, and like Robin said, you're on a really challenging downsloping lot. One more thing I want to point out that has nothing to do with this whole thing, but just I couldn't help but notice in your plan design, you got a steeply downsloping bridge driveway into your garage on a north-facing lot. I've lived in my house next door since 1995. We have a flat driveway. It's icy all winter time. So you're going to have that 4-car garage there, and cars are going to slide right in every time. There's a part of me that wants to see this thing built just to see that, but I don't really want to see it built. I wish you bad luck.
All right, Christian, you got 5 minutes.
Well, we've got more.
Oh, is there more public comment? Oh,
And please
sit
queue
down.
up. Head on over to the lectern podium.
I'm sorry.
Fill out the
And let's
comment
remember
card.
to be civil, please.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Lilith Anderson. I live at 12680 Sierra Drive. I've lived in my home for 25 years. I lived in the Armstrong Tract for 30 years, raised my kids there. I'm a registered nurse at Tahoe Forest Hospital. Might have been there when you were born. I just received this notification in my mailbox just a handful of days ago. Neither one of my neighbors received any kind of notification. So I'm here to speak for myself and on behalf of both of my neighbors, Greg and Cindy Pope, and Gary and Lupe Nelson, who are watching tonight. One, to express a little concern that not everybody in the neighborhood received notification of the public hearing. But also, you know, we are a single-family neighborhood, single units. I don't know, and maybe I'm incorrect, but I don't know of another property in the Armstrong Tract that is multiple dwellings. Most of us have 2,000 square foot or less. My house is 1060 on a 0.18 acre lot. I believe these folks are 1,800 square feet. So almost 6,000 square feet is that's a big property. It's going to be a big impact on the hillside. The hillside, where the property is going to come, you know, it impacts the people below them. So my concern is erosion and erosion mitigation. I haven't had a chance to look at any of the laws, any of the rules, any of the plans other than what I've received on the postcard. But my concern would be, what is the impact for the people and the properties below this proposed structure, and how is that going to impact us? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia O'Connell Sullivan. I live at 10210 Thomas Drive. I am the proximate western property next to this proposed project. I've had this property since 1987. Like Lilith, I've raised my children there. They've gone to school here in Truckee. They were born at Tahoe Forest Hospital. And I have also worked at Tahoe Forest Hospital myself. Currently, I'm a part-time resident because I am on duty in Florida. That has been my journey for a long time, but Truckee is my home. It is my refuge. It is the place that I come to when I am no longer on duty. Having a structure that is 6,000 square feet and 45 feet high will drown out all the light of my home. It'll become a cave, and it will not be suitable for living. Not only that, the design of a fourplex in our community, where no one else exists like that I'm aware of, I don't know if there is any others, will destroy our community as well as other communities like it. This is the bellwether. I worry a lot about housing in Truckee. I have seen Truckee transform since 1987. I'm proud of Truckee and how we've embraced housing. But I think there's other places for it. And I'm not sure that a very, very tiny 1.7 lot can maintain and sustain such a project. The design doesn't even look like any of the homes in the community. The design of the bridge is very significant. Like Robin and Dave, my driveway is also flat and icy during the winter. It's very dangerous. The most significant danger area on Thomas Drive is the exact location where this project is meant to be built. It is also the primary snow load area and storage during the winter time. That particular vacant lot. It covers the entire Thomas Drive area. That's where all the snowblower people put their snow. I would just like to say also, for traffic safety, it's also a very dangerous area downslope. I've seen my kids nearly get run over during that same time frame with all the traffic that has come to Truckee in the meantime. Thomas Drive is narrow during the winter, and I would just ask you, please, to continue and look at the inconsistencies that are proposed in this project. Thank you very much.
Is there any other public comment? Now I'm going to close public comment. The applicant has 5 minutes for rebuttal. Kaylee's going to time you.
Thank you guys for your concern. I'm not trying to like ruin your neighborhood. I'm really not. However, if you guys, everyone keeps citing this high square footage, and that does not include any non-conditions. You're including non-conditioned space, which generally is not included ever. So the amount of square footage that you're saying that we have is just way higher than it is. As far as the snow storage, we have 10 feet on each side, and it is also a bridge. And if you can think of a bridge, the snow actually comes down at almost a 1-to-1 on each side. So we have even more snow storage than is required by the codes. Traffic safety. The project includes 4 garages as well as 4 parking spaces in front of the garages. If I may ask, if this isn't too much, are you guys just worried about your equity?
No, don't answer. Don't answer. It's not a question and answer. It's your turn to rebuttal.
Okay. I believe that their points are selfish, and I know this town 10 times more than them because I've never seen them.
I've lived there longer than you've been alive.
Stop.
Don't go up there, Dave.
Let him finish.
And I believe that they're just, I mean, this entire room was just full of NIMBYs. And the reason no one's having any kids is because of NIMBYs. You could have 4 families in this house. They just don't want them next to you because they just want their property values. That's it. It's pure greed.
Are you finished? Yes. I need either a deliberation or a motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you. And?
I'm looking for it here. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we uphold the decision of the Community Development Director in denying the 10198 Thomas Drive SB9 2-unit development application, planning application 2023-154.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Sammy. Roll call.
Chair Claren?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gove?
Yes.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Luke, would you mind pulling up the date for the appeal, please?
Yeah, I actually don't have that as a slide, but it is Friday, May 31st at 5 p.m. will be the appeal date for this decision.
You have until Friday, May 31st, 5 p.m. to appeal to the town council. Do you understand that? Christian? No, just a yes or no.
I'm sorry to hear the question.
You have until May 31st, 5 p.m. to appeal. Did you hear that?
Correct, thank you. So you guys are denying it, we're doing another appeal.
Right.
Okay. Are you guys familiar that you're actually breaking state law?
We're not discussing that any further.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to item 8, which is staff reports. Do we have any?
We do. Chantal will give a short presentation in just a moment.
Thank you, Lucas, for coming in via Zoom.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
I have to make a decision if I want to keep doing this or not. Oh my God. We're on I'm on a
Sorry, we
spike.
can't-
So
we
this
can't
is-
be having
this
this
is a
conversation.
public
Again,
meeting.
staff reports, number 8, please.
This is going to be really quick.
Thank you.
We just wanted to bring a little update on where we're at with working on development code updates to reflect our changes from the 2040 general plan. So what we have coming up, we are working on creating 2 new zoning districts. This will be for our 2 new general plan land use designations of corridor mixed use and neighborhood mixed use. Our 2040 general plan really has a lot of support for mixed use development. There's 3 new mixed use land use designations that were created. There's lots of land use policies and goals speaking to mixed use development. So this is kind of why we're heading here first. We just kind of wanted to give you an overview in preparation. So first we're going to tackle neighborhood mixed use. These new land use designations are applied to portions of Glenshire and Donner Lake. This portion of Glenshire, this is where like Glenshire Pizza Company is, that area, that's a neighborhood commercial zoning at the moment. That will be changing shortly. And then Donner Lake, these pink areas that are circled are the areas that changed over to neighborhood mixed use. Some of the areas are general commercial zoning, some are neighborhood commercial, and some are residential. So what we're doing is we're looking at the definition in the general plan. So here's a little snippet from there. This is really for neighborhood serving commercial, restaurant, offices, small retail. Mixed use is now required in these land use, in these areas where the land use designation changed. 6 to 8 dwelling units an acre and a maximum FAR of 0.6 at the moment until we have an incentive program. So what staff will be looking at is what uses make sense in a neighborhood. What uses make sense in kind of a neighborhood commercial. How do we add commercial to these residential properties, or how do we incentivize that? And what those development standards should look at. So just kind of giving you a heads up of where we're going with it. And a little different is corridor mixed use. This is being applied to everywhere in this purplish pink, and this is mostly where general commercial and highway commercial zoning existed. And corridor mixed use is really a more intensive use, more dwelling units per acre, higher FAR. We've got service commercial here. So staff will be, it's kind of like general commercial plus housing. So staff is delving into what those uses and development standards should look like for our corridor mixed use properties. And that is the 2 land use designations that we're currently tackling. And what we thought would be helpful is, how can the commission prepare for these discussions? Obviously, we'll have a staff report, but reviewing our 2040 general plan, reviewing both of those land use designations, and then there's also mixed use sections that are separate, and Gateway District has its own group of policies. So, familiarizing yourself there. And then if you don't take time to regularly read our development code, you might want to go in and take a look how our zoning districts are set up, how we set up our use tables, how we do our development standards. And I'm suggesting looking at multifamily, neighborhood commercial, general commercial, and our DMU, or our downtown mixed use. We won't be changing downtown mixed use, but it is our only mixed use zoning designation at the moment. So kind of seeing how that interplays. And then we will be back with some potential changes, some changes and some new zoning districts for you to weigh in on. And if you have any questions on how that process will go, I'm here. Otherwise, we'll have a much more in-depth look at that coming soon.
And Chantal, let me just add a little bit to that. So we wanted to just kind of reintroduce you back into the process because it's been a while since the general plan was adopted, and Chantal and Laura have taken the brunt of the work for this first phase. We are trying to break it out into reasonable chunks to be able to review. These were the 2 sections that we felt would have the most potential for change in the near term. So like we've already had a project that I approved as zoning administrator down at Donner Lake for Truckee Overhead Door, for example. So we know that there's a lot of interest in these areas. So that's why we kind of focused on them first. But I think as you've kind of experienced with tonight's discussions that have happened, having very clear standards is going to be really important in implementing the vision for these land use designations. And so the work that you do as a commission will have long-standing implications for how these areas eventually build out over time. So I know we bog you down with lots of development code amendments. We love them, but they're very, very important for sort of that future character and predictability that we're going to need based on all the state housing laws that we're bound to at this point. So very important work, a lot of complexity, and we'll do our best to bring it to you in manageable chunks.
Can you email at least me this one slide so I know what I'm looking at and I can start reviewing?
Definitely.
Thank you.
I can send you the links as well. I was going to put that in the slideshow, but they're so long and ridiculous, I figured.
Links would be even better.
Emailing the links would be
Sure.
fantastic, and I know there's a lot that goes on between these meetings we have, and it's a big rush to probably always a big rush to get the packet ready and everything.
Yeah.
But just a standard request to, if there's any parts of it that are done early, and I don't know if that's allowed, but if there are any parts of it that you can point us to ahead of time, it's always appreciated.
I do think we had discussed, did we do this with some other zone districts, that we were able to get it out for public review earlier than our standard staff report timelines. So I think we are goaling to, whenever we are ready, to get it out, out there quicker than the Thursday before the meeting.
Right, because we did that with the objective design standards where we were able to provide them publicly, which includes to the commission well before our normal turnaround times. So our goal is at least 2 weeks in advance, and if we can do more than that, we'll do more than that too.
That's
So that
awesome. And
helps a
thank you
lot,
for
yeah.
even letting us know that it's coming. So.
Yeah, giving us a, heads up to look more closely at those sections since we've all read them in detail before is good.
Number 9, Jenna, any upcoming agenda items?
June is a little in flux at this point. We're kind of trying to dial in some things. July is looking like for sure we'll have some agenda items, and then sounds like August, we know for certain we will have Silver Creek back for your review. So we've got a lot of things kind of in the pipeline and just trying to dial in when they'll be on an agenda.
So June's looking like maybe nothing?
Possibly, we're not sure yet, and we should know soon, within the next week or so.
Yeah, if there's ever a meeting that's going to be canceled, early
Yeah,
notice
we'll
on
let
that
you know.
is great too.
June 18. I was checking if I had a ball game that night. Commission member reports. Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We're adjourned.